Chapter 1391. There's movement outside. Jim suddenly stood up anxiously. In the lower level of the pyramid, it was completely dark without a trace of light. Unlike Klaus and the others who had only been here for 2 days. Jim had been here for almost 10 days, and any movement would make him feel like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. Klaus and the others stood up too. "Prepare for battle," Klaus said calmly. Suddenly, the mechanism outside was opened. Then a flame floated into the darkness. "What's that? What's that?" Jim was shocked. "Klaus, are you inside?" Just then, a voice came from outside. Klaus and the members of Lightning Squad recognized it. It was Jollenash's voice. Jim looked at Klaus and the others, who lowered their weapons. "We're on the same side. Don't worry, they're my companions." Klaus and the others brought Jim out of the darkness. They saw Jollenash, Moer, and Morid waiting for them outside. Jaziko stood behind them as well. It felt good to be able to see again. Klaus couldn't help but give Jollenash a warm hug. "Klaus, that guy stinks." "Ha!" Captains being ignored, everyone laughed. Jim looked at Moer, Jollenash, and Morid. Why were there 3 kids? Were they really here to save Klaus and the others? "Klaus." "They are my companions," Klaus said. "Jim. Are you alive too? Where's Kamari?" Jaziko asked. Klaus glanced at Jim and said, "Let's talk outside." "The chairman. Didn't he come?" Nami asked. "There's a troublesome guy outside. The chairman told us to run at least 100 kilometers before nightfall." "What time is it now?" 11 in the morning, Jollenash said. "Then we better hurry." "Since the chairman said 100 kilometers, I don't think he's joking," Klaus said. "But, even if we try our best, we can't run 100 kilometers, right?" At this time, there was no one left in the pyramid. Originally, there were 1 or 2 cannibals. But when Jollenash and the others arrived, they were taken care of. The group successfully walked out of the pyramid. However, they saw that all the birds in the sky were flying towards the front right of the pyramid. The scene was particularly spectacular. There were all kinds of birds that blotted out the sky. It should have been summoned by the fellow who fought the guild leader. Just then, another herd of bison appeared in the distance, charging towards them. No, it wasn't charging towards them, but they were right in the path of the bison's charge. Just as everyone was about to make their move, the sky suddenly darkened. A giant black beast descended from the sky and landed in front of everyone. Jaziko and Jim, who did not know what was going on, were shocked. This giant beast was incomparably huge. It had a pair of wings on its back, and its bloody mouth was wide open. It could bite down on a wild bull with a single bite. In just a few moments, the giant beast had slaughtered dozens of bison. What is this?" "Bustil. He was sent by the president." "Are you going to send us out?" Klaus said. Bustil looked at them and turned his head, as if signaling for them to come up. When Jim and Jaziko climbed onto Bustil's back, they were still in shock. When everyone climbed onto Bustil's back, Bustil did not fly up. Instead, he started sprinting. Why isn't Bustil flying? Look at the situation in the sky. The sky was completely occupied by the birds. Bustil could fly up, but once he did, he couldn't guarantee that the birds would surround him and attack him. When that happened, the people on his back might fall off. If they were on the ground, even if they fell, there would be no casualties. "Who is fighting the guild leader?" Klaus asked. "Someone who calls himself God," Jollenash said. "He's also the mastermind. His name is Candace." He tricked mercenary teams into coming here and feeding them to the cannibals. The cannibals worship him and see him as a god. It's the same for the birds and beasts. He's obtained the faith of the cannibals and beasts. He really is like a god. Then, can the guild leader handle it? Of course. He's our guild leader, Jolanash said. Jolanash said, the chairman can even defeat a real god, let alone a false one. Unfortunately, we can't interfere in this battle. Klaus wanted to help, but he was also very rational. He knew that if he went, he would only cause trouble. He had no practical use. The greatest help he could offer was not helping but being a hindrance. Just then, a strong light appeared behind them. Even in broad daylight, it was still blinding. Jim and Josico were beyond shocked. They felt like they'd come into contact with something incredible. What's that thing we're sitting on? Josico asked. Bustel, a type of demon. Demon? He used to be our enemy. Then, the guild leader skinned him and controlled him. He's one of Mr. Chen's important forces, right? Mr. Chen is using him as our mount. Will it affect his battle with Candice? Bustel looks strong to us, but to the guild leader, he's really just a mount. Along the way, beast hordes kept appearing. Some were large, some were small. However, Bustel didn't want to fight if he could avoid it. Bustel's purpose was to send them out, not to fight. But it still slowed them down. Moreover, they were in the forest, so Bustel couldn't increase his speed. Fortunately, there were no more beast hordes in the second half of the journey. At this moment, Bustel suddenly stopped in his tracks. We're already more than 100 kilometers away. This was probably the most comfortable few hours they'd had since entering the Amazon rainforest. They didn't need to fight at all. They didn't need to move at all. They just sat on Bustel's back. Of course, Bustel's back wasn't comfortable at all. But they were satisfied. At least they wouldn't be in danger for the time being. What do we do now? Leave the forest? Or wait here? Wait. If you're still worried, we can increase the distance. Since the guild leader said 100 kilometers is enough, it shouldn't be more than that. Another hour passed. The sky started to darken. Everyone's mood was complicated and worried. Chapter 1392. Chen. Is it Su Xiang Chun Mang? Yanajian, the upper limit of this so-called god was too low. Even Qin. Zhuiji was stunned. Gown fiercely clattering. Fluttering fragrance buds tied to fine coffin cape annoyance. Also bad award. Candace's greatest reliance was his countless animal worshippers, as well as his energy condensed body. After fighting for almost 6 hours, Chen Xiaobei was stunned. Zilang flees in an instant? Blue Minamata. Candace's heart skipped a beat. My words contradict the words of Guanadine. Does the mail plate talk about returning a favor? Anxious Phoenix. The dark magma was boiling, and the Imperial Thousand Swords were dancing. Now that his feet had been corroded by the dark magma, he needed to use more faith power to resist the corrosion of the dark magma. However, as time passed, the dark magma was not completely expelled. Instead, it gradually increased the corrosion. This made Candice even more anxious. Candice seemed to be in existence in the emptiness realm, but his battle prowess was too weak. Other than the advantage of the number of believers, Chen Guoxing had no way to defeat them. Cumin bolts o lu tsong pai. Ha! Slack off. Sigh at my grave. Within a small radius of 100 meters, there were corpses and bones everywhere. All of this was done by Qin. Zilang Bong Bai. Although Candace's strength was not very strong, it was not without threat. Under normal circumstances, Chen Xiaobei would not be able to kill Chen Xiaobei. Acting like a locusts. In the desolate kingdom of Chang Tuadi, Pangaea boss swarms of insects, flocks of birds that covered the sky, and waves of beasts. Chin. Gu Xiao with a brothel. Do I have a filter? Invade? Ha. Coin lottery. Song talks about the fine groove man Pan Jiao Jiao Tong after confirming the boundaries of the animal believers. Chen Xiaobei and Chen Xiaobei found it difficult to find animal believers. Word Marsh Oracle v Gushi Ao Kendall saw Chin. Zilu Chu. To pretend to be ill. Could it be that he was tired? This outcome was out of Candace's expectations, but it was also reasonable. Chin. Pecking at the Huai River and reeling back to the church. Dark punishment sword. Am I lucky? Zi Duan Shirlongin fact, it was Chin. Please forgive me for coming across the Qilu River and salivating for my mail. Chin. Words. Is it a dam that can be restored to its original state? Bang! There was nothing more suitable than this place to cultivate the Imperial Thousand Swords. A large number could be provided to Chin Chin. Xiong, you can't fight anymore. Candice asked tentatively. I don't want to drag it out any longer. Spine. Pulling out the ant's shoulder blade with a phoenix's grip. Straw. Forgive. Chin. Scum. Kaboom. Head judge, Kun. How can I regret the drought? Clap. Back then, the handsome young man had taught him how to use dazzling magic to absorb the destructive power of Satan's blood. Most of the destructive power was absorbed by super dazzling spell. That's Chin. Tired and weary. Kubi Ao, however, the power of annihilation was not limitless. It would be gone after one use. Back then, that perverted mother of Helis, Ava, had used the blood of Satan as her final threat. However, Ava couldn't control it. If she released Satan's blood, she would be finished. But Chin. Since the larva quietly shines brilliantly. Slap milk. John for Long Candace felt a sense of danger. But he still didn't believe it. Castrated when pecking. Is. Line plate dumplings. To be wary of another, he looked at Chin again. Pecking at the chasm. A well-proportioned crotch. Is it because of my tolerance? To hold a broken handle. Chin. Wei Mao Che Lu. Squid stay on the boat. Polypus. Love is hard to bear, love is hard to get along with. Then, a second magic array appeared, then a third, Bichin. Ziki. Neon cowards. Take a picture of neon baking. Tai Sien obedient pepper eyes twisted. This was a very bad feeling. Candace could faintly feel the terror contained in this spell. Hundreds of magic arrays of different sizes overlapped each other and coiled around Chin Ho. Zi Chang Ingchin. Fall to the ground. Ha. Pui. Mu Xian corpse case matchmaker. Forgive. Bichin. Jinai. Ping Xian material Chong Lai. Gunnery, which are you two pikes? The moment those starlight jumped out, anything they touched was destroyed. When Candace's beast believers touched the starlight, their bodies instantly turned into ashes. However, the starlight didn't disappear. Instead, it split into two and jumped in different directions. This kind of destruction and killing was like nuclear fission. One turned into two, two turned into four. Whether it was birds, poisonous insects, bloodthirsty people, or harmless herbivores, they were all faced with destruction at this moment. They might have been bewitched by Candace's faith, but they weren't truly fearless. At least, the starlight brought fear to them. For a moment, the tropical rainforest under the night sky was covered by the starlight. It was still spreading in a circular manner. It wasn't just a two-dimensional parallel spread, but a sphere that included the sky and the ground. It was also spreading in places that couldn't be seen. When the trees touched the starlight, they instantly lost their vitality and were carbonized. Look, that direction. What's that? Jolanash pointed in the direction they'd escaped from. Klaus saw it too. Josico saw it too. Jim saw it too. The starlight was spreading in the distance. They didn't know what it was. It was spreading too fast. Soon, it was near them. However, when it reached their vicinity, it suddenly stopped and disappeared. A range of 100 kilometers. They were now almost outside the range of 100 kilometers. The entire area turned black. It was darker than the night. The trees didn't disappear. All the flowers and trees were carbonized. They still maintained their original forms, but they'd lost their vitality. Everyone realized that Qin Xiaobei was in trouble. Z. Chunling Alliance. Qiaoying. Yongguanan. Mu Duan. Because of Qin. Dregs. Gown riddle, what is the meal? What if they didn't listen to Qin? Qiao Muai. Qiao. Fu Xiao Duan. Jiu Muai. Qin Qin. Qiao Zhong Miao. Nan Lu. Fortunately, listening to the president was the most basic requirement of the association. Even though the starlight had disappeared, they still didn't dare to approach the area. If a surveillance satellite passed by now, it would definitely capture a huge circle. In fact, such a huge death zone was quickly discovered by many organizations. Everyone stayed at the edge of the death zone, waiting for the result. Finally, they saw a figure walk out of the zone. President. Everyone saw clearly. It was Qin. Zhu. Qiaoying. Today's battle was really tough. I had to use my trump card. Honestly, Qin. Qiaoying. 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 On copy, this spell was useful to Qin. Table Duan. Song Gontao's Lie. But he could only use it once. After all, this spell didn't belong to him. But it was worth it this time. If he didn't use that dazzling spell, Qin Xayan wouldn't have been able to kill him. If he didn't use such a dazzling spell, Qin. Qiaoying. The window bud is tied to the fine dirt fool. Chapter 1393. Josico and Jim followed at the back. Their eyes were fixed on Qin Su. Makeup scale. Along the way, they didn't encounter anything. There was not a single living creature in the nearby rainforest. The next day, Qin Su. Shuijiji Oxim. Kidnapping Ing. Yongmi shouting. After all, Feilai's due date was getting closer and closer. If it wasn't for the urgent matter with Klaus, Qin Su would have died. Shouting Oxim. Shouting. But because of the flight, he could only stay in New Bari for a day. But in one night, there were many more people in New Bari. Hundreds of researchers swarmed into New Bari. Qin Su. Yongmi shouting. Yongmi shouting. Yongmi shouting. Yongmi shouting. Because of Qin Su. Investor Noah. Yongmi shouting. Yongmi shouting. Yongmi shouting. Yongmi shouting. The Tunguska explosion happened in what is now the Evenki Autonomous Region of Siberia, Russia. It happened in 1908, more than 100 years had passed. The Tunguska explosion had always been an unsolved mystery. The more famous theories were the nuclear explosion theory or the comet theory. However, the conclusion drawn from the on-site investigation was that both the nuclear explosion theory and the comet theory had many loopholes. Nuclear bombs were first introduced in 1945, 37 years after the Tunguska explosion. There was no way there would be a nuclear bomb in 1908, at least in theory. There was also the comet theory. Based on the investigation and research of researchers, they suspected that a comet had fallen into the Tunguska forest. That was why it had such a shocking scene. However, this speculation couldn't be confirmed either. There were no craters or comet fragments found at the scene. And because it was so old, it was difficult to find substantial evidence. However, it was different this time. A similar Tunguska explosion had happened in Brazil. This was enough to excite researchers all over the world. The Amazon explosion that happened in the Amazon rainforest was very similar to the Tunguska explosion. There were no reports of comets or meteors entering the atmosphere from observatories all over the world. Therefore, the comet theory could be ruled out. No one saw or heard the explosion. All the plants at the scene of the Amazon explosion were carbonized. This was very similar to the Tunguska explosion. The Tunguska explosion had an area of about 2,300 square kilometers, while the Amazon explosion had an area of about 700 square kilometers. Although the area was not as large as the Tunguska explosion, scientists found that the energy released by the Amazon explosion was greater than the Tunguska explosion. This was because the Tunguska explosion did not destroy all the plants within its range. Only the center of the explosion was destroyed, and then the shock wave spread out in a circular manner like a wave. On the other hand, the energy of the Amazon explosion was more concentrated, and there were no signs of life within the area affected. Not only the surface, but even the underground species were completely wiped out. Chin. Knock into him and still want to meet him in the form of a dry man. Cut Pusie GG. Cookout, Moose Farm of course, it also brought them a lot of enthusiasm. Josico and Jim dropped everyone off at the airport. They also knew that the news had spread like wildfire, and they happened to be one of the few who knew the truth. But they didn't dare to say it, because they knew the consequences if they did. Klaus won't let them go. A burden. Switch to a substitute. They knew that this man, who was usually careless and liked to make wicked jokes, was actually a terrifying demon king. In this matter, the happiest should be the Brazilian government. Although the Amazon explosion had caused a certain amount of damage to the Amazon. But because of this, the number of passengers increased a lot. Now, many tourist groups were heading to New Bari town to witness the true appearance of the Amazon explosion. Although there was no sign of life in the Amazon explosion, there was no danger. Coupled with the government's publicity and the international media's eagerness to report on it, everyone was curious about this place. Chin. A burden. The black badger screen, the old spear, the delicate and obedient. Fall. Hidden ash. Jealousy, in other words, he had always been an ordinary person. But who was it that was guiding him? What would he do if he encountered the same enemy again? Chin. Garbage. Working hard to calculate. Snipe. Ha. Cuddling, 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 cuddling emblematic core castrator. Mechanical sack brimstone of course, Chin. Dare to overstep my authority. Cuddling and supporting each other. Annoying P. Snipe. Sigma Lie. Collecting money. Destructive force was not an ordinary skill. It was a drop of Satan's blood. Under the Demon King, everything would be wiped out. There were only a few drops of Satan's blood in the world. He had to eliminate the ones that had already been used. So, Chin. Cuddling, 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 cuddling at the end of the day. Strengthening one's own strength was the way to go. UCLA, Kuluafu, there's a party at the basketball court tonight. Do you want to come? No. Kuluafu shook his head and rejected his roommate, Apar's invitation. I need to study. Okay. Apar patted Kuluafu's shoulder and sighed meaningfully. I bought this beer. You can drink it if you need it. Kuluafu had just broken up not long ago. His girlfriend had made him a cuckold. Kuluafu had always been in low spirits. As Kuluafu's good friend, Opar obviously hoped that Kuluafu could let go of his past feelings. Even the party was prepared by Opar for Kuluafu. Unfortunately, Kuluafu could not let go of his past feelings at all. He rejected Apar's invitation directly. The dorm was silent at night. All the guys in the building seemed to have gone to the party. He could vaguely hear music from the stadium in the distance. Kuluafu put down the textbook in his hands. He was not in the mood to read anymore. He recalled the bits and pieces of his past with his girlfriend. Thinking of his ex-girlfriend's betrayal, Kuluafu could not calm down. Kuluafu looked around the dorm and saw the beer under Apar's bed. He picked up a can of beer. He planned to get drunk himself. The beer was pretty good, but the alcohol content was a bit low. Kuluafu's mind was not messed up because of the beer. Instead, he became more clear-headed. The past with his ex-girlfriend became clearer. Kuluafu did not want to dwell on it anymore. He could only find other things to distract himself. Kuluafu picked up the textbook again. After reading a few chapters, he suddenly felt that his thoughts were very clear. Soon, Kuluafu was immersed in the ocean of learning. Looking at his excited expression, he seemed to be drowning in the ocean of knowledge. Chapter 1394. Hey, Kuluafu, did you finish all my beer? When Apar came back, he saw Kuluafu lying on the table. The entire room was filled with the smell of alcohol, and the table was covered in alcohol. Apar shook Kuluafu, and he opened his eyes in a daze. Hi, Apar, why are you back? Wasn't the party fun? It's already 9:20, you *shoal, Apar said. What? 9:20. Kuluafu's expression changed. Damn, it's over. I have an exam today. When is the exam? 9:30, West Building. Apar looked at the time. If you go now, you might be able to make it, but you drank all night. Are you sure you want to take the exam? Kuluafu ignored the smell of alcohol and hurriedly put away his books and pen. Forget it, I'll drive you there on my motorcycle. Apar was indeed Kuluafu's best friend. Seeing how nervous Kuluafu was, he could only help. What exam is this? Graduate Comprehensive Exam. It's a preliminary exam before the official exam, Kuluafu said. Kuluafu said, however, the number of places provided by the school is limited. If my results are not outstanding enough in this exam, it is very likely that I will lose the opportunity to take the official exam. Then, my 6 months of preparation will be wasted. Okay, is there anything I can help you with? Bless me, Kuluafu said helplessly. When Apar walked Kuluafu out of the exam room, the invigilator was already there. But when Kuluafu walked past him, the invigilator couldn't help but frown. Kuluafu, did you drink last night? Don't you know that today's exam is very important? Is this the attitude you use to face an important exam? The invigilator clearly knew Kuluafu. Sorry, teacher. Kuluafu didn't explain and hurried into the exam room. Although the invigilator scolded him, he didn't say anything else. After all, Kuluafu was an adult, and he was just a teacher. But he didn't have high hopes for Kuluafu. From the smell on Kuluafu's body, he had drunk a lot last night. Maybe he wasn't sober yet. What kind of result could he get in this state? Kuluafu was very nervous. His heart was filled with regret. How could he have been so rash last night? There was an exam the next day, and he actually drank so much that night. Moreover, Kuluafu felt the urge to pee. When the papers were handed out, Croft tensed his legs. He wanted to go to the washroom, very much. Kuluafu was answering questions on the exam, and all Kuluafu could think about was finishing the exam quickly and going to the toilet. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. What was supposed to be a 90-minute exam was completed in less than 60 minutes by Kuluafu. Korafu, why are you standing up? Teacher. I'm done. Kuluafu hurriedly placed the test paper in front of the invigilator and then ran away like a gust of wind. This bastard, is he trying to fool me? The proctor looked at Kuluafu's back and picked up the test paper. The invigilator didn't have much hope for Kuluafu's results. Hey, this guy doesn't seem to be answering randomly. The more the invigilator watched, the more surprised he became. Kuluafu was not just playing around, he was really answering the questions seriously. Could it be that the guy was confident, so he answered in a hurry? Mr. Chin, let me give you a report on the sales of our beer since it was released. Chestnuts are afraid of old bones, Australian shells are plucked out of their mouths and teeth. Si Yun. Ri Di. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Bai Peng Di Na. Bai Peng Nan. Cao Yohu waved Xing Huang clam. Chen Xiaobei. Si Qian Siping. Chong Sun. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Lang Zai. Bai Kan Ping Huang clam. Bai Peng. Scabbard cut Chun Mao. Didn't our advertisement spread out? No, our advertising coverage is already very wide, but my old boss, Shiyuan Beer, deliberately gave us a discount on the day we were put on the shelves, which caused our promotion to be greatly reduced. Then, Shiyuan Beer's headquarters in the United States bribed some of the media to expose our sales. Kuluafu wasn't in a good mood either. After all, he and Chen Xiaobei were originally in a good mood. Lotus root pattern, how's the sales after that? How's the sales after that? On the second day, sales doubled to 20,000 cans. On the third day, there was a slight increase, reaching 32,000 cans. Kuluafu paused and said, in the past 3 days, Dashan Beer was only ranked 68th on the sales list of various beer brands in California. It's okay. We're just a new product. We have time. Bai Peng. Lao Zhonggao. Yuan Huang Chao Yi Mu Ji. Brain Quail Neon Baked Jie. Enchen Xiaobei. Zi. Bai Peng Imo. Bai Peng Rong. Bai Peng. At the same time, he gave Kuluafu enough credit. Chen Xiaobei. Glancing at each other intently, Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Otherwise, Chen Xiaobei. The stagnant capital returns to the swamp. Bai Peng. However, everything was difficult at the beginning. Even if the beginning was not good, Chen Xiaobei. Chen Xiaobei. Bai Peng. Bai Peng Rong. Bai Peng. Zhongjiu na xia tua asal na ri guanjin yo ao ping. Huang. Huang. Chen Xiaobei. My humble oval Huai River is crossing the river to oyster flood Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. But now, with the increase of investment, so far, Chen Xiaobei Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. From the factory to the production line to the raw materials, as well as the employees' salaries and the advertising investment, it was a huge amount. If the brewery could not improve, then Chen Xiaobei. Bai Peng Rong. By then, it would no longer be a loss of a few $1 million, but tens of millions of dollars. Fortunately, Chen Xiaobei. Since I was caught by Aunt Xan Lu. So even if it lost money, Chen Xiaobei. Scum, bad, and flattering. Can't say Chen Xiaobei. Slowly Quan. The more he invested, the more he had to worry. Chen Xiaobei. bumping into each other to support the chow chow to pass through the chow chow chow, hooking up the pump and grabbing the male breast. With the launch of the product and the investment in advertising, in the next 6 months, Chen Xiaobei. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Bai Peng. Bai Peng Rong. Of course, now Chen Xiaobei. Bai Peng Rong. Bai Peng Rong. Chen Xiaobei. Pretending to be a scholar and squeezing aside the others. Bai Peng. Bai Peng Rong. Bad Perch Luan Peng Song Shu. In the next 20 days, Fei Lai could give birth at any time. She could give birth just by walking around. Now, wherever Fei Lai went, there would be a large group of bodyguards following her. It was more like surveillance than protection. Chapter 1395. After the exam, Koluofu was very anxious. It wasn't just because his relationship wasn't going well, but also because he was worried about his exam results. He couldn't even study now. Every time he did, his mind would be filled with all sorts of thoughts. Koluofu thought about how he had drunk to calm himself down the night before the exam. Let's try again. Koluofu opened the fridge. There were a few bottles of beer inside. Koluofu took out the beer and opened it to take a sip. This taste is really average. Koluofu shook his head and sat back down. He picked up the textbook and flipped through it. After just 1 page, Koluofu's mind was filled with chaotic thoughts again. Damn it, I can't calm down at all. Just then, Apar came in with a box of beer. Hey, Koluofu, do you want a drink? Here, I like the taste, Apar said. Koluofu took the beer that Apar tossed over and took a sip. Instantly, Koluofu felt refreshed. This was the taste, this was the feeling. Holding the textbook, Koluofu looked through it and asked, "Mountain beer. Is this beer new?" "I think so." Apar picked up a can of beer and drank it himself. "Feels good." Just then, a woman's voice came from the path below the window. "Koluofu, is Apar here?" It was a girl from their school. Koluofu knew her. When did Apar get together with this girl? Hearing that this girl was hard to deal with, Koluofu started to admire Apar's ability. Apar quickly waved his hand. Koluofu said to the girl outside the window, "Apar isn't here. How did you manage to get this woman?" "That night at the basketball court party. She just happened to be heartbroken, so I bought her a can of beer. Then we hooked up, but I didn't plan on developing a relationship with her," Apar said matter-of-factly. "I really envy your ability to pick up girls," Koluofu said as he glanced at the textbook. Koluofu went through the contents of the textbook in his mind. He seemed to have memorized the contents of the textbook from his conversation with Apar. Koluofu was surprised and started reading the textbook again. "Go study. I have an activity tonight." Apar turned and left. Clover took a sip of beer. "Go." Koluofu realized that the effects of drinking this beer and revising the contents of the textbook were not bad. Moreover, as long as he focused on reviewing, those messy thoughts would not appear at all. Clover tried another brand of beer. "Wow, after drinking this mountain brand of beer, why do the other brands of beer taste so bad?" Koluofu didn't realize that he had drunk other brands of beer before. He just felt that the beer he had taken out previously tasted ordinary. But now, with the comparison, Koluofu didn't just feel that it was average, he felt that it tasted bad. There were many things that needed to be compared. Once there was a comparison, the gap would be revealed. Koluofu began to make conscious attempts. Koluofu realized that after reading 2 pages of the textbook, if he didn't drink the mountain brand beer, his mind would start to wander again. However, as long as he drank a mouthful of beer, his revision efficiency would immediately increase. After a few attempts, Kuluofu finally confirmed that this Dashin beer really had a miraculous effect on his revision. The beer made his brain very clear, and it worked faster. However, after drinking 7 or 8 cans, he felt tipsy. Then, Kuluofu fell asleep in a daze. "Mr. Denver, these are the sales records for the past 3 days." Denver took the report his assistant handed him. This report was provided by Mara Supermarket. Currently, Dashin beer was only available in Mara Supermarket. Therefore, Mara Supermarket could provide the most accurate sales information. Denver rubbed the space between his eyebrows. During this period, he was under as much pressure as Chin Wei. After all, every time Chin Wei. Was Chin Wei a burden? Paw. Paw. Knocking on the chimney, men are in great danger. Ma. Headstrong na. Yes. But he hadn't achieved any results. One could imagine how much psychological burden he had. Denver glanced at the sales report. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. It increased so much. Denver looked at the sales report for the past 3 days. The sales of Dashin beer were gradually increasing. The sales were 43,000 cans, 54,000 cans, and 77,000 cans respectively. The weekly sales had already entered the top 30 in California. Why did the sales suddenly increase by 20,000 cans? Denver showed a hint of doubt. The assistant said, "A few days ago, a college student posted on Facebook that he drank our brand of beer while revising his homework. The effect was very good." "That's ridiculous." "No one would believe it," Denver said. "It's ridiculous, but it started a trend of pranks," the assistant said. Now, drinking and working at the same time has become a hot topic on Facebook. Many people are participating in the discussion and have even uploaded photos. Denver opened Facebook and found a topic to discuss. One of the netizens uploaded a few photos and a paragraph of text. "I'm drinking Dashin beer while surfing. I've successfully challenged 16-meter waves." One of the photos was of the surfer holding a can of Dashin beer while surfing in the sea. Denver's face lit up. He found a few other accounts that were participating in the topic. They were all in various professions. There was even a wanted criminal who was running away. From the scene, it could be seen that there were a few police officers following behind him. While this wanted criminal was running away, he was still drinking from a glass of beer. "I'm drinking Dashin beer while surfing. As you can see, those cops can't catch up with me at all." Denver's heart jumped. Could it be Chin? Main Yohi Pancreas Common saying bear ping pong. This topic was very sudden, and Denver could not help but suspect it. Moreover, American pop culture was very strange. If a topic became popular, it would become a trend in a short period of time and even become a part of pop culture. For example, the Ice Bucket Challenge 2 years ago. However, if the topic disappeared, then the popularity would also fall to the bottom and finally disappear completely. The Americans were too forgetful and liked to join in on the fun. What if it was really Chin? How can one endure hardship? Knock, blow, scrunch up to the waist, have a bad look, and hope for sex. Is it a ping-pong threshold? Fat pounding shallow at the very least, their sales wouldn't be that bad. Now, it was up to them to see how much attention they could earn through this wave of trending topics on the internet. Chapter 1396. Mr. Chin, let me tell you a piece of good news. Our daily sales have exceeded 100,000 cans, Denver couldn't help but say to Chin Xiu. Ah. With their help, the topic of doing various things while drinking Dashin beer became more and more popular. As a result, their sales increased day by day. Not bad. Did you come up with this topic? Chen Xiang asked. Chin show. The virtuous locust carries the squid, Mr. Chin, isn't this the topic you found people to start? It's not me. I didn't do anything. I think you're capable, so I said I won't interfere with the management. Denver was dazed. Was this topic a natural one? Shiyuan Beer, America's headquarters. Looking at the sales report, Weston Lee's face darkened. He wasn't angry because of his beer sales, but because an eye-catching beer brand had entered his sight. Dashin Beer. This was a brand new beer brand. But in the 10 days since it was released, the sales kept increasing. From 10,000 cans on the first day, it had exceeded 100,000 cans now. Of course, there was still a huge gap between this and Shiyuan Beer's sales. Shiyuan Beer's daily sales in America were maintained at more than 3.5 million cans. California was a very important region, with sales of more than 500,000 cans per day. It was either first or second in sales every day. The maternity leave brands that could compete with Shiyuan Beer were basically the top international brands. Dashin Beer's daily sales were still increasing, but there was still a huge gap between it and Shiyuan Beer. Dashin Beer was far from qualified to compete with Shiyuan Beer. But Weston Lees just couldn't stand Dashin Beer and the CEO of Dashin Beer. Because Denver used to be his boss, and Weston Reese relied on him to pick a side and then kicked out Denver, who did not pick a side. Then, he replaced Denver and became the head of Shiyuan Beer's North American region. But now, this guy who was like a stray dog in his eyes had actually gotten up and appeared in front of him again. Even if Dashin Beer had never targeted Shiyuan Beer, it didn't have the right to do so. But Weston Lees still believed that Denver was here for revenge. Big Mountain Beer and Denver hadn't made a move yet, but Weston Reese had already viewed them as imaginary enemies. For a small brewery, selling 100,000 cans of beer a day was a pretty good result. Even Chin. The imperial title of Fu Ci. Models. Liaozhou Qinhuai Jian Dumpling. Tired. What? Waiter V. Change the ribbon. Zhu Qun at that time, even if he had to take a loan, the bank would be more than happy to lend him money. No, I have to curb the development of Dashin Beer. He could not give Denver a chance to stand in front of him again and have a fair talk with him. Weston Lees suddenly thought of an idea. Mr. Denver, something has happened. The trend on the internet has suddenly changed. The assistant hurriedly pushed open the door of Denver's office. What happened? Now Denver was very concerned about the topic on the internet. Hearing the assistant's words, he immediately turned on his phone. It's like this. Someone posted on Facebook that he was drinking while driving and then got into a car accident. Now, someone is purposely changing the topic and attacking our company's irresponsible promotion, causing social unrest. Denver raised his eyebrows. Dashin Beer had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and reached 100,000 daily sales in a short 10 days. It was obviously affecting the interests of other brands. Also, Denver had a vague feeling that this was not just a dispute over business interests. After all, Dashin Beer had only been around for a short time. Although the sales were gratifying, the 100,000 daily sales were distributed among dozens of beer brands. The impact on everyone was very limited. Small and medium-sized manufacturers would not waste time, energy, and money to attack Dashin Beer. Because they did not have the capital. Their profits were not high to begin with. Why would they spend hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to attack Dashin Beer? No one had anything better to do. There was only one possibility. It was the big beer manufacturers. Only they had the ability to do so. When the big manufacturers discovered a potential threat, they would indeed take the initiative to attack the potential threat. However, with Dashin Beer's current sales, it was not at the level of the so-called potential threat. Denver used to be the general manager of Shiyuan Beer in North America. He had done the same thing before. Therefore, after analyzing it, he realized that it was not about market competition. It was about revenge. The target was probably Shiyuan Beer. Denver sneered. It was Weston Lee's. That kid was still so unmotivated. Denver did not have a good impression of Shiyuan Beer. After all, he was kicked out by Shiyuan Beer. He was even more disdainful of Weston Lee's. The conflict with Shiyuan Beer came too early. It was so early that even Denver was surprised. However, this did not mean that Denver was afraid. Small companies were afraid of big companies mainly because they did not have equal rights to speak. It was already not bad for small companies to have 1 or 2 million annual advertising expenses. Some small companies did not even have any advertising expenses. Dashin Beer's predecessor was such a small brewery. Its annual sales were not more than 10 million. But now, Dashin Beer was different. Because of Chin. Burden. Talking about Wushuang Man. Style Luo Tuoi Bei. Disease. Ma Shou Bei. Male servant degree. Min Tong. Of course, the plan was to invest the money into advertising in the next 6 months. However, Denver changed his mind. He wanted to use this opportunity to cause trouble. Call the manager of the publicity department here, Denver said. Also, when the daily sales report from Mara Supermarket comes out, bring it to me immediately. Denver was a shrewd businessman and a good manager. After making the decision, he quickly conveyed his order. Then, he received the daily sales report from Mara Supermarket. Due to the influence of the internet, Dashin Beer's sales had dropped by 100,000 cans yesterday. This was the first time Dashin Beer's sales had gone against the trend. Denver had to change the situation as soon as possible. Otherwise, the sales would plummet. Under Denver's urging, the publicity department quickly came up with a few plans. One of the plans made Denver hesitate. Chapter 1397. This plan was to use Shiyuan Beer as a comparison. The first example given by the publicity planner was, last night, a party was held at home. When they were having fun, the Dashin Beer was finished. At the party, the neighbors brought the beer stored at home over. In the end, no one could drink it. When did the taste of Shiyuan Beer become so bad? This kind of publicity was actually a kind of soft advertising. It was very common. But generally speaking, if a company used this kind of soft advertising, it should not use the names of other companies, especially if it was to belittle other companies to highlight their own company. If they used the names of other companies, they might be sued for unfair business competition. This was not unprecedented. For example, when Pepsi and Coca-Cola were competing, Pepsi had an advertisement. A boy came to the vending machine and pressed 2 cans of Coca-Cola. Then he stepped on the 2 cans of Coca-Cola to press the Pepsi button on the top. In the end, the boy took away the Pepsi and ignored the 2 cans of Coca-Cola on the ground. Because of this advertisement, Pepsi was sued, and the advertisement was taken down. They were also fined. Of course, Pepsi knew that this advertisement was against the law, but they still did it. It was because they wanted to take advantage of Coca-Cola, which was at its peak at that time. Although this led to a series of advertising wars, PepsiCo still made a profit from this. Because other than compensating a few $1 million, Pepsi did not do any real harm. A few $1 million was not even as much as the cost of an advertisement. But Pepsi used this to gain more attention. Of course, that kind of open war was too unskillful. Denver would not do such a thing. He planned to use the Internet Water Army to advertise. The advantage of using the Internet Water Army was that even if Shiyuan Beer was unhappy, it could not do anything to Dashin Beer. Shiyuan beer could not sue the water army, right? Dashan beer could say that it was the consumer's personal behavior. Also, the difference between Shiyuan beer and Dashan beer was too big. No matter how Shiyuan beer fought back, it was still advertising for Dashan beer. All in all, this kind of behavior was very hooligan. At night, in a university student's apartment, Koluofu was still revising his homework. Suddenly, Aparl called. Koluofu, help me buy a few cases of beer. Koluofu's face darkened. The beer at the party is finished. Yes, these bastards can drink too much, Aparl said. Aren't you having a party at Captain's apartment? That place should be closer to the convenience store than here, right? You don't know this. Originally, I prepared 5 boxes of Dashan beer. In the end, I saw that the beer was almost finished, so I went to the convenience store to buy 5 boxes of Shiyuan beer. In the end, everyone felt that Shiyuan beer tasted bad. I have no choice. If I can't get Dashan beer, this party will end on a bad note. Then let's go to the convenience store again. The convenience store doesn't have Dashan beer, only Mara Supermarket does. In the entire city, only Beitan Mara Supermarket is open 24 hours a day. What? You want me to go to Beitan Mara Supermarket? It's at least 30 kilometers away from the school. Koluofu, you like Dashan beer too, right? Can you reserve a few boxes of beer for our dormitory? It's my treat. Apar's words were exactly what Koluofu wanted. Although Koluofu liked Dashan beer, the price of Dashan beer was a lot more expensive than ordinary beer. Drinking it occasionally wasn't bad, but if you were to drink it every day, Koluofu couldn't afford it. The beer supply in the dormitory was basically handled by his rich second-generation roommate, Appa. To be honest, Koluofu was now completely obsessed with Dashan beer. Every time he reviewed his lessons, he would drink a few cans of beer. Every time he reviewed his lessons while drinking, it was very efficient. However, it wasn't completely flawless. If he drank 10 cans of beer in one go, he would get drunk. Therefore, if he had classes in the afternoon, he definitely couldn't drink it in the afternoon. The best time to drink it was after dinner. Moreover, there was another advantage to drinking Dashan beer while reviewing his lessons. That was, it wouldn't cause a hangover, and he wouldn't feel dizzy the next day. This was also the reason why Koluofu was obsessed with Dashan beer. Of course, Dashan beer had another disadvantage. It couldn't be mixed with other beers at the same time. If other beers were drunk alone, there would be no problem. However, if he were to drink other beers after drinking Dashan beer, he would immediately feel that the other beers tasted bad. It wasn't because Dashan beer affected his taste buds, but because the difference in taste between the two beers was too obvious. After running back and forth, Koluofu enjoyed Dashan beer while playing with his phone. Just then, Koluofu saw an article on Facebook. The content of this article was exactly the same as the problem Apar encountered before. It was also because he drank Dashan beer before going online at the party and then replaced it with Shiyuan beer, causing the people at the party to be dissatisfied. Koluofu thought for a moment, opened his Facebook, and wrote an article. Dashan beer usage guide. I'm a math student at UCLA. As a fan of Dashan beer, I have a passion for Dashan beer that's similar to drugs. Therefore, here, I will write a usage guide for Dashan beer. First, Dashan beer can't be mixed with other brands of beer because it will make you lose interest in the other beers. Second, Dashan beer is a very good party drink. Dashan beer can make the party more lively. Trust me, Dashan beer is the best choice for a party. Third, Dashan beer is also a very good condiment. Not long ago, I tried using Dashan beer to cook China's famous beer duck. I can't forget the taste for a long time. Every fan of Dashan beer, please try beer duck cooked with dashin beer. The taste will definitely make you doubt your previous recipes. 4th, please find a place close to Mara's supermarket to live because dashin beer is only sold there. 5th, please work hard to earn money because dashin beer is 3 times more expensive than regular beer. As soon as Kaluafu posted this article, he immediately received a reply. Batman Forever replied, I'll add a 6th point. Dashin beer can be used to catch fish. Please don't doubt my opinion. I went fishing with my friends and poured dashin beer into the river. In the end, a school of fish swam over. Soon, Kaluafu brought up this topic and received a lot of replies. Some people replied seriously, while others were joking. Chapter 1398. Kaluafu didn't expect that a random article he posted would become a hot topic. In just over 10 hours, this topic had garnered thousands of replies and tens of thousands of reposts. Kaluafu did not expect this, and neither did Denver. Because the topic started by his publicity department through the internet water army didn't have the desired effect, and then it disappeared in the crowd. Even Shiyuan Beer didn't notice this topic. On the other hand, another topic had inexplicably become popular. It seemed that everyone was participating in the discussion about the more applications of dashin beer. This topic actually gave rise to a second one. That was to use beer to make beer ducks. There was a netizen who used different brands of beer to make beer ducks. All the steps, portions, and ingredients were exactly the same. The only difference was the brand of beer. After more than a dozen servings of beer duck were made, they were eaten separately and given different scores. For some reason, dashin beer had actually become a condiment in people's mouths. Of course, Denver did not care about this. No matter what happened to mountain beer, it was fine as long as the sales volume went up. Especially after Denver received the sales report for the past few days, he became even happier. In the past few days, the sales of dashin beer had also gradually increased. The current sales volume was stable at around 150,000 cans per day. According to the initial high investment, selling 150,000 cans a day was already profitable. Of course, he still needed to maintain this level of sales. Chin. Soaking in the desert Sistanch cup descending the cormorant curtain. The reason why Denver was so diligent in reporting sales was not only to take credit, but also to give Chin Xiang a chance. Imitation copy after all, no investor could last long if they were losing money every day. Even charity was about stability, let alone business investments. Chin. Sizzle. Dia. Bramble with round branches. That twisting, and tearing. Let's not talk about whether we can make money or not. First of all, we must not lose money. Nowadays, many of the new startups actually had potential. However, very few companies were able to persist past the initial stage. Just because they couldn't maintain the supply of funds. Once the capital chain was broken, they could only resort to financing or loans. However, if it was a loan, the bank would need to observe the prospects. If the bank was not optimistic, then the bank would definitely not make a loss. Investors, on the other hand, were even more demanding. Investors not only looked at the progress of the investment, but also at the rate of return. Not every investor's needs were the same. Some investors wanted to wait for the company to go public and make a profit before leaving. Some investors wanted stable and sustainable profits. They wanted fixed assets and a certain amount of power to intervene and influence the company's decisions. Chin. Zilai Sherna, glancing. Sincerely flattering the peacock, throwing away a date with the crane, scolding the imperial carriage, deceiving the cormorant pouch. Iridium. Jia Huan scratches. This was enough to prove that Chin. Squatting in the sun maybe Chin. Bumping into the emperor and making a fool out of himself. The emperor is afraid of judgment and shocked to his grave. Shallow. Squatting in the toilet. Samadhi hissing. Please forgive me. Now, Chen. Is it Sistanch Guanadine? Ji Simi sailed to the former Chin Yi. Right? Rue. More ferocious and stubborn. Jinba Straw Hat was a high-quality industry. A stable and appreciative industry was a high-quality industry. On the other hand, a fixed asset that could continuously and steadily generate profits was an excellent industry. For example, Marina's restaurant was an excellent business. Currently, 30% of Marina's restaurant's shares were in the hands of the bank. Words. Bow. Couple riding crutches. Resisting at the gorilla pond. Fu Wei. The bank was unwilling to give up the 30% shares. Of course, other than being unwilling to give up the shares, the bank did not dare to interfere with the restaurant's operation at all. The bank only wanted to hold shares and did not intend to destroy the normal operation of Marina's restaurant. Of course, Chen. Burden. Baojin Chu Huan Luo. Book Pokin Chuyu. Grave Joy Diming. 0% of the price. If Chen. Did he dare to make a fool of himself? Zinc Gap Dai Pen Frame But Chin. I dare to forgive you. There were slums in many big cities in the United States. The more prosperous the city, the more slums there were. It was the same in Los Angeles. There was the largest slum on the West Coast, Antwerp. Just like what people knew about slums, dirty and messy could basically describe the impression that Antwerp gave people. The architectural style of the 1960s and 1970s and the poor community planning made it filled with an unbearable smell. There were lawbreakers wandering the streets. There was also a McDonald's, but the McDonald's checkout counter here was installed with bulletproof glass. More than 60% of the residents here had criminal records, and 20% of them were serious crimes. There had been sports stars and movie stars here before, but none of them were willing to admit that they were from Antwerp. That was because when people talked about this place, the first thing they thought of was criminals. Liam's son was a drug addict who relied on theft, robbery, and extortion to survive. Liam's son hadn't eaten for almost 2 days, but he had his eyes on a target. That person should have just come back from shopping. He was carrying food and a box of beer. Liam's son looked around. There weren't many people on the street at this time. Liam's son rushed up and strangled the man's neck. At the same time, he stabbed the man's waist with a dagger. "Buddy, hand over the money, or I'll kill you. Don't hurt me. I don't have money." The man was so scared that he quickly took out his wallet. Liam's son snatched the man's wallet and glanced at it. Disappointment appeared on his face. There were only a few dollars in it. "Where's your credit card? Give me your credit card." "I don't have a credit card. I've already broken my promise. I don't have money to pay it back." Lian Musin rubbed his nose. He felt like his drug addiction was coming back. Liam's son glanced at the man, snatched the food and beer from his arms, turned around, and disappeared into the dark alley. He hurried back to his nest, and Liamson's feeling was getting worse. He was no stranger to this state. The drug addiction was acting up. Liam's son hurriedly opened the drawer. The tranquilizer was gone, and the tranquilizer was gone. He felt himself getting more and more miserable. Liam's son suddenly saw the beer. He wanted to get himself drunk. Maybe that would be the way to get through this drug addiction. This beer tastes good. Ever since I started taking drugs, I rarely touch alcoholic drinks. However, at that moment, Liam's son felt that the beer seemed to be good. For a moment, Liam's son forgot about his drug addiction acting up and started drinking can after can of beer. Until he was drunk, Liam's son had never slept so peacefully. When he woke up the next day, Liam's son found himself very energetic. It was a feeling that he had never felt before. Chapter 1399. Mr. Denver, I saw an interesting post. Would you like to hear it? The assistant said, standing next to Denver. As Denver's assistant, Milo basically had to intervene in everything. She was just advising Denver. Oh. What is it? In Antwerp, there's a drug addict called Liam's son. He robbed a few local supermarkets to suppress his addiction. What kind of news is that? Denver asked, confused. This kind of thing happened every day in America, let alone in Antwerp. This Liam's son didn't rob money. He robbed beer. Beer? Do drug addicts drink beer? I heard that they find beer extremely bitter when they drink it, Denver said, confused. He wanted to rob our beer. It said that the drug addict suppressed his addiction by drinking Dashin beer, Milo said. He's arrested now, but he's been complaining about why only Mara supermarket sells Dashin beer. Denver's eyes lit up. Go and confirm if it's true. If it's true, make it a hot topic and increase the publicity. Liam's son, someone wants to see you. Liam's son was curious who wanted to see him. He had no family now and they were all disappointed in him. Of course, deep down, Liam's son still wanted to return to a normal life. However, his drug addiction couldn't calm him down. Liam's son walked to the visiting room dejectedly. He saw a beautiful but unfamiliar girl sitting outside the window. Liam's son sat in front of the girl. Do I know you? Are you the Liam's son who robbed the supermarket? Milo asked. Are you a reporter? Liam's son asked, squinting. I'm not a reporter. I'm an employee of Dashin Beer, Milo said. I'm interested in your story. Although Liam's son was a drug addict, he wasn't stupid. He vaguely sensed Milo's intention. What do I get? I can bail you out, but you have to cooperate with our company's publicity. Just bail me out. Liam's son obviously wanted more. I won't give you money directly, but I can give you a chance. Milo said, it's a chance for you to get back on track. In the next month, you can be sponsored by Dashin Beer. You can drink as much as you want and get rid of your drug addiction. After you are sentenced, our company will also actively help you get a chance to be released on parole and then you can work in our company. Of course, just as an ordinary employee. If you can stay away from drugs for 6 months, you can get a reward of $10,000 in addition to your salary. Liam Muson's eyes flickered as he looked at Milo. He had to admit that he was tempted. Not only for the chance to return to a normal life, but also for the dignified, beautiful, and generous girl in front of him. Do you have a girlfriend? Milo was stunned, but then she said proudly, you don't deserve love now. You can ask me this question when you really give up drugs. I accept your conditions, Liam Muson said. Generally speaking, 10 days was enough for a drug addict to get rid of his addiction. However, that was only a physical escape. The real difficulty was still the psychological one. Many drug addicts had entered rehab before, but the probability of relapse within 6 months was more than 90%. This was a psychological problem. Most of the time, they could not live a normal life. Their hearts were sensitive and fragile. The accumulated distress and depression were blocked in their hearts, and in the end, they would return to the path of no return. Milo did not want her boyfriend to be a drug addict. Of course, if Liam Muson gave up drugs, she did not mind giving this man a chance to pursue her. Everyone wanted a new life, even Liam Muson. Even though he knew that this opportunity was based on his deeds. Then Denver began to use Liam Muson for various publicity. In the beginning, the publicity was not very effective. The United States was a sick country. Normal people did not care about the lives of drug addicts. Until a private rehab center announced that Dashin beer had a very good suppressive effect on drug addiction and reduced the pain after the addiction flared up. That was when it really attracted the attention of the media. Denver obtained sales data. The highest single-day sales had exceeded 250,000 cans. Through market research, Denver found that the rehab centers had driven up sales. There were thousands of rehab centers in California, and most of them were private rehab centers. Many of these centers had started to use Dashin beer to detoxify and suppress the pain of drug addiction. The sales of 250,000 cans in a single day not only made Dashin beer the sixth best beer seller in California, but it also made Dashin beer into the top 30 in the United States. Weston Lee's expression grew uglier. It was no longer a matter of personal grudges anymore. It was the potential of Dashin beer that made him deeply aware of the seriousness of the problem. Dashin beer's increase in sales did not have much impact on the second and third-tier brands. It was like a brand that sold 20,000 cans a day. Due to the increase in sales of Dashin beer, their sales dropped to 18,000 cans. They would not blame Dashin beer. However, the market would not suddenly expand. When the number of consumers was fixed, a new brand suddenly increased its sales, and most of the sales were from the first-tier brands. Weston Lees had been investigating the owner of Dashin beer. However, he could not find out at all. Dashin beer was not a listed company, so the owner's identity could not be disclosed. Weston Lees could not help but suspect that Dashin beer was actually Denver's business. No, he couldn't let this go on. If this continued, the California market might be completely occupied by Dashin beer. Although Shiyuan beer was an international first-tier brand, they could not simply give up on a market. The California market was already very large. This made Weston Lees feel conflicted. Based on his understanding of Denver, they would not be satisfied with California. They would attack the United States and even the world's market. Chapter 1400. How did a big company attack a small company? One was to snipe at the channel. The first thing Wesley thought of was to pressure Mara's supermarket. Dashin beer was only available in Mara's supermarket. The operation was simple. Lower the price in exchange for Mara's supermarket support. At the same time, he subtly threatened that if Mara's supermarket didn't cooperate, Shiyuan beer would increase the price. Weinstein felt that Mara's supermarket should know how to choose. After all, Shiyuan beer's influence and scale couldn't be compared to Dashin beer. Of course, this couldn't be made public. Once it was made public, Shiyuan beer would be involved in unfair competition, just like the 3Q war. Weinstein received a reply in less than 20 minutes. Weston was delighted. It seemed that Mara's supermarket valued Shiyuan beer very much. They replied to his request so quickly. However, he didn't expect Mara's supermarket to reject Weinstein's request. They also announced that they would investigate whether Shiyuan beer had the right to be sold in Mara's supermarket. Wesley Lees was furious at first, but he quickly regained his senses. They weren't superior and subordinate to Mara's supermarket. Mara's supermarket was a very important channel. If Mara's supermarket stopped selling Shiyuan beer, it wouldn't affect Shiyuan beer's sales in the short term. However, once this was exposed, the media, consumers, and even competitors would slander Shiyuan beer. Why did Mara's supermarket stop selling Shiyuan beer? Was it because there was a quality problem with Shiyuan beer? Or was it because Shiyuan beer didn't live up to its name? Mara's supermarket was a very important channel for alcohol products. At the same time, it had a lot of say. Thinking of this, Weinstein started sweating. He was too muddle-headed to do something like this. If the email he sent to Mara's supermarket was made public, he could only resign. Just as Weinstein worried, the email was quickly sent to Qin Shiyuan. Stop. Winnip wasn't stupid. Of course, she knew that there were other rules. Let's not talk about Qin Shi Yuan first. Withdraw. Cut the scabbard, just talk about Qin Shi Yuan. Cone nail yun. Mechanical scratch bar. Balance alliance. Shi Yuan beer wasn't bad. Although it was an international first-tier brand, it wasn't a dominant brand. However, Shi Yuan beer was not a dominant beer brand. In fact, until now, no beer brands dared to say that they were dominant. As a result, even if Mara's supermarket didn't have Shi Yuan beer, consumers would still choose other brands of beer. They wouldn't say that they didn't have Shi Yuan beer. But Mara's supermarket really needed Dashin beer. Even though Dashin beer was currently ranked 6th on the daily beer sales list in California, it was the most popular beer brand in Mara's supermarket. Dashin beer was not available in other supermarkets and distribution channels. This limited the development of Dashin beer. However, this was related to the production of Dashin beer. Once Mountain Beer's production increased, it would definitely be able to compete for the top sales position in California. It was ridiculous that the head of Joy Beer, Willie Leasy, wanted to threaten Mara's supermarket with this. The 5th most popular beer brand in Mara's supermarket was threatening to remove the #1 beer brand from the shelves by raising the price of its supply. Was this a joke? One could imagine the importance of Dashin beer to Mara's supermarket. It was also very important to Winnip's future plans for the American supermarket chain. In the future, Mara's supermarkets would be set up all over the U.S. If other supermarkets did not have Dashin beer, but Mara's supermarkets did, then customers would be more likely to come to Mara's supermarkets. Of course, Winnip was more willing to work with Qin Xiaobei. Words. Ha. Capture. Moo. Si Wuyan, so she forwarded the email from Willie Reese to Qin Xiaobei. Zhu. Colorful camouflage. Meleofrichin. Zhuetsigue puppet. Polypus. See-through. Ah, Mr. Denver, I have an email. Take a look and see if you can use it. Denver to pick up Qin. Chase him. Blowing at the beginning. Xing Fu poked a locust tree. Qing Yanji. Choking disease, did Mara's supermarket give it to you? Denver asked curiously. Well, do you think this letter is useful? Yes, but not now, Denver said. Why? Mr. Qin, holding the cards in your hands is more effective than playing them, Denver said with a smile. As his own partner, Denver is happy to give Qin Ziguai, like a nuclear weapon? Yes, you're right. Denver smiled and said, I know Willie Lease very well. He used to be my subordinate. He is talented, but he is not the kind of person who will sacrifice himself for the company's benefit. This kind of person is easy for us to use. All right, I won't interfere in this matter. According to our previous agreement, you can get 5% of the shares. When you are free, you can come and sign this document. The shares were not given for free. Denver also had to pay for them. This was a legal sale of shares. Based on the current sales volume of more than 250,000 cans per day, the annual sales could reach about $400 million, and the net profit could possibly exceed $50 million. Then, the market valuation would be at least $500 million. 5% of the shares was $25 million. Qin. Bumping into Jijiujian and Mo pie dumplings. Oyster flood. Play with benzene and uranium legs. Shouts and shrugs. Dazed Fern at dusk. Even if Denver didn't have the money, he would find his way to buy it. Mr. Qin, other than these 5 shares, I hope that I can get more shares in the future. At most, no more than 20. A burden. Beautiful and vulgar purple oyster. On the one hand, to win Denver's heart, he had to give him enough benefits. Denver's methods these days: Chin, robbing, Yen Jun, Zhan Nan, Connexin, Huang Yu, Bad Jiao, Neon Peng Lai, Jiao and I, Miao and I, Xian, stirring, Jiao and I, salt of Ludi drought, break points and try to flatter Jing. Moist cormorant sigma color dispatch locusts. 20% of the shares was enough to tie Denver to Dashin beer. Also, I have to make something clear to you. Dashin beer will not be listed. If you want to make money through the shares, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. Chin. I got it. Denver understood Chin. Denver understood that Chin. Perhaps going public could make a lot of money and increase Dashin beer's valuation, but that was all virtual wealth. It didn't represent real value. Chapter 1401. Of course, not going public also meant that Denver would never have the chance to actually control Mountain Beer. He would always be a major shareholder. If Mountain Beer went public, Chen Zhao's shares could be continuously diluted through the stock market. But if it didn't go public, as long as Chen Zhao didn't sell his shares, no one could replace him. Of course, Mountain Beer's profit prospects were very good. It was even more than those so-called super companies. For example, Goose's market value was $800 billion, but its net profit was only $3 billion. Goose's market value was in the top 10 in the world, but its net profit wasn't even in the top 100. If they were Goose's shareholders and only wanted to earn money from Goose's dividends, they probably wouldn't be able to recoup their losses. But for a brand with high net profit like Mountain Beer, they might be able to recoup their losses in a few years. It would be sustainable for the rest of their lives. Right now, Chen Zhao was basically living a secluded life. In about a week, Fei Lai's due date would be here. Chen Zhao estimated that he would have to send Fei Lai to the hospital in a few days. Fei Lai, do you think we should go to the hospital? Chen Zhao asked. Fei Lai shook her head. No, I don't think it's that fast. Let's go in a few days. Fei Lai didn't want to stay in a hospital filled with the smell of medicine for a few days. Chen, you don't know how to deliver a baby. Fei Lai wanted to give birth at home. Chen Zhao smiled bitterly. He knew all the knowledge about delivering a baby. However, he hadn't delivered a baby yet. His home wasn't as good as the hospital. If it was a natural birth, it would be fine. At most, it would be slightly painful. He could also give Fei Lai a painless delivery. However, if it was a difficult birth, it wouldn't be a problem of pain. It would be fatal. By then, he wouldn't be able to do anything, so Chen Zhao felt that sending Fei Lai to the hospital was the safest choice. Forget it. He would observe first. There was still some time. The next day, Chen Zhao received another call from Denver. Mr. Chen, Weston Lease is representing Happy Beer. He wants to buy Mountain Beer for $600 million. Ha! Chen Zhao chuckled. Not selling. I know, Denver said. I'm just doing my job to inform you. Even he felt that Weston Lease's offer was too strange. Big companies suppressed small companies. If they couldn't kill them, they would buy them. This was the most common trick. When a large company makes an irresistible offer to a threatening small company, most small companies will succumb to the huge temptation and sell their company. But Weston Lee's offer was a little insulting. His offer was more in line with the market valuation, but the key was that the brand of Dashin beer was still on the rise. In less than a month, the product had already reached 250,000 cans of sales. It was foreseeable that the profit would be far higher than the market valuation. If he were to make an offer of $600 million, he would be making things difficult for himself and disgusting Denver at the same time. Mr. Chin, I plan to have my company shoot a new commercial. Didn't we already advertise before? It's only been 20 days, and now we're filming again. Isn't it too impatient? It's not the same. The previous advertisements were used on second and third-tier TV stations. Now, I plan to place the advertisements on ABC. ABC is one of the top 5 TV stations. That kind of low-quality advertisement will not only not have a good effect, it is very likely to lower our brand value. If you think it's necessary, then go ahead, Chen Zhao said. Mr. Chen, I don't have time these few days, Denver said. I need to go to Denver to prepare for the beer festival and rent the venue and booth. Participating in the beer festival was something they'd planned long ago. Do you need me to do it? Chen Zhao asked. You better do it. Okay, give me the contact number of the advertising company. I'll find time to talk to them in the next 2 days. The next day, before Chen Zhao left, he reminded Fei Lai again and again. Chen, I'm not a kid anymore. If my stomach hurts, I'll call an ambulance immediately. Chen Zhao thought about it. How about I don't go out? It's not something important, anyway. Fei Lai was helpless against Chen Zhao's strange love. In order to take care of herself, Chen Zhao even put down his business. Chen, get out of here and work right now. Okay. Chen Zhao glanced at the time and estimated when he would leave. Chen Zhao arrived at the advertising company. He'd already talked to the advertising company yesterday. When Chen Zhao arrived, a woman stood at the door to welcome him. Miss, have we met before? Chen Zhao didn't want to flirt with the woman. She really looked familiar. The woman glanced at Chen Zhao. Sir, I'm Navot Singer. That night, I was with Dahlia and saw you on the way. Ah. I remember now. Chen Zhao patted his head. It wasn't that Chen Zhao was forgetful, but that he hadn't paid much attention to Navots that night. This is Dahlia's company. Chen Zhao didn't expect to find Stephen's daughter's company after looking around. Yes, please follow me. Navot Singer brought Chen Zhao to the advertising company. When Chen Zhao stood at the door, Dahlia was clearly surprised too. Looking at Navots beside her, Dahlia still didn't understand. Mr. Chen, what are you doing? Boss, he's our client. Navot still called Dahlia boss in the company. Mr. Chen, you're our client. Yes, I'm here on behalf of Mountain Beer to discuss an advertising partnership with you. Chen Zhao nodded. Can we get to the main topic now? Of course. Daily Moore quickly composed herself. She nodded and said to Navot Singh, go gather the people from the creative planning department. Gather in the conference room. Chen Zhao was the client, while Dahlia and her advertising company were the client. So, Chen Zhao could make most requests, regardless of whether they were reasonable or not. However, Chen Zhao didn't understand advertising. Moreover, Dahlia's proposal was still at the copywriting stage. Then the director would explain it. Chen Zhao only understood a little. Mr. Chen, what do you think of our proposal? Is there anything that needs to be changed? Not bad. What's the budget? Chen Zhao asked. Chapter 1402. Daily Moore's company mainly did advertising planning, creativity, and filming. Of course, compared to shooting commercials, the income from advertising planning and creativity was insignificant. If they could get a job to shoot a commercial, the minimum would be $1 or $2 million USD, and the maximum would be more than $10 million USD. The company would be responsible for arranging the director, actors, and props, and they would be able to get a generous remuneration, and then there would be labor fees. Chen Zhao felt that Daily Moore's company's idea was good. After some consideration, he accepted Daily Moore's suggestion. Chen Zhao didn't plan on haggling, not because of anything else, but because this company belonged to Daily Moore, Stephen's daughter. It was troublesome to do business with acquaintances. If Chen Zhao had known that the company belonged to Daily Moore, he definitely wouldn't have come personally. But since he'd already discussed it, Chen Zhao could only accept. At least, if the conditions and proposal weren't bad, he would definitely give it to acquaintances first. Regardless of whether it was at home or abroad, this was an extremely common occurrence. After all, this was a society that valued relationships. Mr. Chen, let's eat together. Daily Moore knew that Chen Zhao was from China. Chinese people usually got close to each other at the dining table. Chen Zhao looked at the time and hesitated. Mr. Chen, are you in a hurry? Let's go. Chen Zhao smiled. Chen Zhao didn't have a good impression of Daily Moore, but he wouldn't cut ties with her for the rest of his life just because of the small conflict at the beginning. Plus, putting aside Daily Moore's relationship with Stephen, they were still partners now. Of course, it was impossible for them to be as close as Stephen's or even Zola's. Chen Zhao and Dahlia's conversation was still a bit distant. Nawat's hinges went with them. Actually, Daily Moore wanted to get closer to Chen Zhao through another method. That was the topic the three of them had in common, magic. In the restaurant, Not Singh started a conversation. Mr. Chen, what magic system do you specialize in? Specialize? Strengthening, I guess. Chen Zhao thought for a moment and answered, but I'm learning more complicated magic. I've dabbled in clone, spiritual, and elemental magic. If you want to make progress in magic, it's best to focus on one type of magic. Coming into contact with too many isn't beneficial. Also, a male spiritualist has limited magic power. There's no point in learning too much magic, Nawat said, sounding like a senior. Of course, she believed that she had the right to do so. Also, strengthening spells are harmful to the body, so you should exercise more, Mr. Chen. I've heard of spiritualists who specialize in strengthening spells. When they get older, their bodies aren't in good shape. When they're young, they use strengthening spells too often, which causes a heavy burden on their bodies. Miss Nawat, what is your specialization? I specialize in exploration and perception. I'm not in the big system, Nawat said nonchalantly. I don't know much about this system, Chen Zhao said curiously. Can you explain? It was not that he wanted to learn this system of magic, but he wanted to understand it. Although detection and perception wasn't a combat spell, Nawat Singh wasn't completely defenseless. In the magic world, there was another name for detection and perception magic. It was called the 50-50 system. This kind of spiritualist would have a 50-50 chance of winning, even against opponents much stronger than them. The so-called 50-50 chance didn't mean that they would win or lose. It meant that they could tie most of the time, or both sides would be heavily injured. Do you mind if I use a spell on you? Nawat Singh asked. Go ahead. Nawat pointed her finger between her eyebrows and glared at Chen Zhao. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt a wave of magic from Nawat's body. The next moment, a smile appeared on Nawat's face. Mr. Chen, your weakness is your left arm. Chen Zhao couldn't deny this. After all, his left arm was indeed weaker than his right arm. Nawat Singh picked up the knife and fork on the table and stabbed her right arm. Chen Zhao felt a stab on his left arm. Ha! Chen Zhao was a bit surprised. Is this damage duplication? No, it's weakness reflection, Nawat said. I can copy your weakness, and then hurt you by hurting my weakness. Not Singh said. Navot suddenly put more force into her knife and fork. She'd wanted to make a small cut on her arm as a demonstration, but she couldn't. No matter how much force she used, she still couldn't cut it open. Navot's expression didn't change. It seemed that this Asian was quite strong. Such a small attack was useless against him. Chen Zhao thought of the weakness. Mirror image could indeed be a threat to him. After all, his weakness was exposed to the opponent, and the opponent could attack him at will. Is this a perfect spell? Chen Zhao asked. Navot shook her head with a smile. To her, Chen Zhao's ability to say something like this meant that he wasn't very skilled. He could actually say something so childish. How can perfect spells exist in this world? Navot shook her head with a smile. For example, I'm hurting you through weakness reflection, but I'm also hurt. Then can't you just cast a healing spell on yourself? Actually, there are many ways to make up for it. Different situations require different methods, but that's not a spell, let alone a perfect spell. Nawat Singh felt that Chen Zhao was only slightly better than Delamore. Occasionally, he would ask some questions that she thought were childish. However, this was understandable. Not every spiritualist had a complete legacy. Of course, with the mentality of educating a junior, Navot was happy to give Chen Zhao professional guidance. Chen Zhao didn't notice Navot's disdain. Instead, he'd learned a lot of magic knowledge from Navot's. Usually in the association, everyone was in awe of him. What he said was the truth. Chapter 1403. On the other hand, Chen Zhao was having a great time chatting with Knots. Unlike the people in the association who always had to put on airs, Chen Zhao really learned a lot from Knots. At the very least, everyone looked at things from a different perspective. Knots was a bit of a teacher, but other than that, there wasn't anything wrong with her. Just then, the lights in the restaurant lit up. The sky outside the window seemed to have darkened. Dark clouds covered all of Los Angeles. Just then, the TV hanging in the restaurant reported a piece of news. According to the weather satellite, the first Pacific tropical cyclone of the year would land on the west coast in the next 3 days. The wind could reach level 16. This weather is so uncomfortable. Chen Zhao looked outside the window. The dark clouds reminded him of the sky when he'd fought the source of corruption. This time, the sky was similar, but he didn't feel any magical aura. It's been 13 years since the last reverse tropical cyclone made landfall on the west coast. Every time a reverse tropical cyclone makes landfall on the west coast, it brings something unclean, Nawat said. There's something like that. In the east, it's called a typhoon. In North America, it's called a hurricane. But most tropical cyclones move along the path of the Earth's rotation. In China's Taoism, it's called gathering the sun. Typhoons bring destruction, but they also bring life, Knot said. Reverse tropical cyclones go against the Earth's rotation, so it's called ascending to the underworld. Chen Zhao basically knew nothing about Taoism. He wasn't even as knowledgeable as a foreigner like Knots. What's ascending to the underworld? It blows Yin energy to the west coast, Knots said. Normal people will get sick when exposed to large amounts of Yin energy, so I can foresee that there'll be a lot of sick people on the west coast in the future. That's great. Great. Why? I'm a doctor, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Is there anything more enjoyable than more patients? Also, it's best not to go out when a tropical cyclone passes by, in case you get into trouble. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Who would go out during a typhoon? The last time a tropical cyclone landed in North America, it also blew a ghost ship to the west coast. It was just a ghost ship. Chen Zhao didn't care at all. Of course, it was best not to go out during a typhoon. Feilai's due date was in a few days. He had to send her to the hospital as soon as possible. It would be troublesome if Typhoon Tianfuli gave birth. When Chen Zhao walked out of the restaurant, a green bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Chen Zhao frowned. It was windy. The wind was really uncomfortable. The tropical cyclone hadn't even made landfall yet, but they could already feel the threatening yin qi in the wind. Navots frowned as well. "What's wrong, singer?" Dailymore asked. "This pressure reminds me of the third night that happened in downtown Los Angeles 2 years ago." Chen Zhao was about to part ways with them, but after hearing Navot's words, he couldn't help but ask, "Do you think this tropical cyclone is similar to third night?" "I can't say for sure, but the signs of weather change will only appear on the third night. According to the weather station's weather report, the tropical cyclone will make landfall in 3 days. If someone was awakening for the third night, it would be impossible for this sign to appear on the first day. I still have something to do. I'm leaving." Chen Zhao's expression suddenly turned serious. Looking at Chen Zhao's departing figure, Navots touched her left arm. "Dailymore, it's best not to go out these few days." "What's wrong? Is it because of the hurricane? Did you forget what I said? Last time, a ghost ship was blown ashore. People really died then." Navots looked around again. "This is really uncomfortable." "Singer, come stay at my place for a few days," Dailymore said. "I'm a bit scared by myself. I'm also planning to give my employees a few days off. I'll go back to work after the tropical cyclone passes." "Sure." Nawat Singh looked around, the uncomfortable feeling getting more obvious. "Dailymore, you drive." Sitting in the car, Nawat Singh started using magic. Dahlia had been learning magic from Navots for a while. She could feel the mana undulations coming from Navot's body. However, she didn't understand what spell Navots was using from the car. Suddenly, images flashed through Navot's mind. A pair of eyes was staring at her. That bad feeling came from that pair of eyes staring at him. "Dailymore, stop the car. I might need to deal with some trouble. Here. There are so many people here. Are you sure you want to fight someone here? I don't want to cause trouble for you. I'm your student. Did you forget?" Navots hesitated for a moment. "All right then, drive the car to a more secluded place. Do you know who's causing trouble for you?" "I'm probably from a Roma family," Navots said. "I don't have any enemies. It can only be people from my family." "Why would someone from the same family cause trouble for you?" "My family has a custom. Every awakened witch in the family can inherit a magic tool. Of course, I also inherited a magic tool. Magic tools are very rare, and the number of magic tools in the family is limited. It's first come, first served, and the latecomers don't have a chance. They either have to wait for the previous witch to die and then inherit it, or snatch it from other witches. The people who came to find trouble with me probably had this intention. Through my ESP vision, I felt that those eyes belonged to people that I've seen before. No matter how I counted, there were only a few people that I had seen before." "What magic tool did you inherit?" Nawat's shingles pointed to the earrings in her ears. Dailymore looked at Navot's earrings. They were made of silver and had 2 small stars on them. The design was quite unique. Chapter 1404. This place is fine. Nawat Singh said. This place was remote enough that they couldn't see any buildings in front or behind them. Is someone following us? Daramore asked hesitantly. He's already here. Where? There are no cars on the road. Navots looked to the side of the road. She had already sensed the person's location. Come out, Ocula. A gust of wind blew past, and a red-haired woman walked out. The woman wore exquisite makeup, a black dress, and dark red high heels. Her wavy hair was wrapped around her chest, and she crossed her arms as she walked over. "Hi, sister." Okula waved her hand lightly with a charming smile on her face. Daily Moore turned to look at Nawat Singh. "Your sister." Nawat looked at Okula coldly. It was obvious that the relationship between the two sisters was not good. It could even be said to be bad, very bad. "Are you going to show off your little animals again?" Nawat Singh's tone carried a hint of mockery. The corner of Okula's mouth twitched. Her sister's words had clearly hit her sore spot. But very quickly, Okula regained his composure. "It's different this time. I found a new toy." Just as Nawat was about to release the weakness mirror image, he suddenly remembered that the weakness mirror image he used before hadn't been removed. Nawat raised his left arm. Just as he was about to remove the weakness image, a sudden gust of wind blew past. A bloody mouth bit down on Nawat Singh's left arm. "Ah!" Dahlia was startled. It was a jackal with gray spots all over its body, but this jackal was a little scary. When Okula saw that Nawat Singh was hit, he became more and more pleased with himself. At that moment, an even larger jackal appeared beside Okula. Dozens of equally large jackals surrounded Nawat and Daily Moore. These giant jackals seemed to have appeared out of thin air. He hadn't even noticed their existence before. "Sister, aren't you surprised now?" Okula said proudly. "I named them wind-howling beasts. They were modified by a pack of jackals." Nawat said coldly, "You still haven't changed your old tricks. You're still using invisible wind and gigantification. Other than that, you don't have any other tricks. But you still fell for it. It doesn't matter if it's an old trick or not, as long as it works." "It works." Nawat sneered and suddenly pulled with force with his left arm. A woof! The jackal that was biting Nawat's left arm suddenly let out a blood-curdling screech and fell to the ground, spitting out blood. Okula's expression changed drastically. What was going on? Why wasn't she hurt? Could it be that Nawat learned enhancement magic? Okula's face was filled with confusion. But she didn't hesitate and immediately ordered the other jackals to attack Nawat Singh. Only then did Nawat truly use the power of his left arm. The weak spot mirror image could copy the enemy's weak spot, but it would also copy the characteristics of that spot. However, Nawat also didn't understand why his left arm, which was supposed to be his weak spot, was so terrifying. A jackal pounced on her. Nawat didn't even have time to react, but her left arm had already reacted. Nawat raised her left arm and grabbed the jackal's head in the air. Then, she crushed it. This action stunned both Daily Moore and Okula. Daily Moore had heard from Nawat that she wasn't good at fighting. But now, it seemed that Nawat was being too humble when she said that she wasn't good at fighting. Okula felt even more incredulous. Daily Moore might have thought that Nawat Shingles was being modest, but Okula Shingles knew her sister very well. She didn't understand why her sister, who wasn't good at fighting, would suddenly change her style. Moreover, she chose the enhancement magic that didn't suit her at all. It was like changing subjects halfway through a university course. She'd been studying math, but she went to practice sports. Very few witches would play enhancement magic. On one hand, it was because women's stamina wasn't as good as men's, so their enhancement magic wasn't as effective. On the other hand, witches generally had higher magic power than men. They had more choices than enhancement magic. But why did Nawat Singh, who was not trained properly, have such great power? As a matter of fact, even Nawat herself was dumbfounded. His left arm was supposed to be his weakness, but wasn't it a little too obvious? Just then, two more jackals attacked from the left and right. Navat Singh's left arm was faster, and his methods were more brutal. She grabbed the car beside her and swung it around. The two jackals were smashed to pieces. Although these jackals were controlled by Okula Singh, they weren't mindless creatures. They were also fearful. After Navats killed a few of their companions, no jackals dared to come forward anymore. Navats was envious of her left arm that didn't belong to her. Not only did this left arm possess immense strength, but its instinctive reaction had also become muscle memory. She didn't even need to worry. The arm could sense battle and danger on its own. Unfortunately, Weakness Mirror had a time limit. It would probably be over in a few minutes. It seemed that the man was stronger than she'd imagined. However, was his left arm really his weakness? Was it so strong and hard to deal with? Or had her spell gone wrong? She hadn't used Weakness Mirror just now, but Ability Mirror. Unlike Weakness Mirror Image, Ability Mirror Image was more difficult to cast. Nawat Shingles had been practicing it for years and still hadn't learned it. Could it be that he had accidentally used his mirror image ability? Was that why she'd gotten Chen Zhao's ability? In fact, his true strength was in his left arm. Ocula, disappear from my sight immediately. Otherwise, I might not be able to control myself and crush your jaw. Okula's face was ashen. He had come to find Navats with confidence, but he didn't expect to be slapped in the face by her. Chapter 1405. After Okula Singh left, Nawat Singh suddenly sat on the ground. Seeing this, Daily Moore hurried over to help Nawat Singh. Singh, what's wrong? I'm fine. Let me sit on the ground for a while. Nawat Singh had a good time just now, but that arm wasn't hers. As the magic disappeared, the burden came with it. You had to pay interest when you borrowed something from someone else. If Okula hadn't been scared away, Navats would probably have lost. Do we go to the hospital? Daily Moore asked. Navats shook her head. She couldn't even be bothered to talk now. After sitting on the ground for more than half an hour, she finally got into the car with Daily Moore's help. The car had been swung around by Navats, but apart from some blood and two not-so-obvious dents, there wasn't any other damage. Singh, what happened just now? That was the ability spell I used on Mr. Chen earlier, Navats said. I borrowed his strongest ability. Navats was now very sure that he must have accidentally used his mirror image ability. Is this the power of strengthening magic? Yes, strengthening magic is best at fighting. It has powerful attack and resistance, but its weakness is also very obvious, Navats said. It's too much of a burden on the body. Seeing Chen Zhao return, Fei Lai's expression became nervous. Chen, what's wrong? Fei Lai, I think you're due soon. How about we go to the hospital? No. Fei Lai shook her head immediately. According to the weather report, a tropical cyclone might land on the west coast in the next 3 days. Then we'll wait for it to pass. Can you control the child in your stomach? Of course. She listens to me. Chen Zhao was helpless. Fei Lai was so determined, so he could only give up on sending her to the hospital for now. Let me do a check. Chen Zhao started examining Fei Lai and the baby in her stomach. It wasn't just a routine check. Chen Zhao also used magic to check their vitals. Suddenly, he sensed that the baby's heart rate was extremely low. Chen Zhao was shocked. He glanced at Fei Lai from the corner of his eye, but his expression did not change. A fetus heart rate was usually higher than an adult's, but their child's heart rate was so low that Chen Zhao had to be careful. There were many possibilities for a low fetal heart rate. It could be a problem with the mother, but Fei Lai was healthy and paid attention to her diet. There shouldn't be any problems. Otherwise, it was the fetus's own problem. Although the child hadn't been born yet, he was already conscious. Even in her stomach, the child was still very active. Perhaps he was tired of playing. Chen Zhao was very nervous. Had this always been a problem, or had it just appeared? Is there a problem with the child's development? He had been to the hospital several times before, but there were no problems with the child's development. Then it should be a temporary problem. He sent his magic power into Fei Lai's body. As expected, Chen Zhao realized that the child was wrapping the umbilical cord around his neck, but he couldn't break free. In the end, he choked himself until he fainted. Chen Zhao was a bit angry. This little bastard hadn't even been born yet and he was already looking for trouble for himself and his mother. If he'd wrapped the umbilical cord like this on the day of delivery, he wouldn't have been able to give birth naturally. Thankfully, the umbilical cord wasn't completely tied up. After the little bastard fainted, it loosened on its own. The little bastard suddenly moved and opened his eyes. He seemed to have seen something. Chen Zhao suddenly realized that his magic power was being absorbed. Fei Lai wasn't a spiritualist. She couldn't absorb magic power. Chen Zhao frowned. Was it the little bastard absorbing the magic power? Just then, the little bastard fell into a deep sleep again. But now, his body was much more stable. Chen Zhao heaved a sigh of relief. Fei Lai rubbed her stomach gently. Just then, another emergency alert appeared on the TV. According to the satellite photos sent by NASA to the Weather Bureau, a tropical cyclone was evolving in the Pacific Ocean 1,400 kilometers southwest of the west coast. The winds at the center of the tropical cyclone had reached 200 kilometers per hour, reaching the peak of a Category 3 hurricane. At present, the tropical cyclone was still strengthening. In the next 24 hours, the tropical cyclone was likely to reach Category 5 or above. The Weather Bureau officially named the cyclone which. Chen Zhao found it hard to breathe. He could feel that the cyclone was coming for his family. It was a life and death crisis. What was a Category 5 hurricane? The Weather Bureau divided hurricanes into 5 levels. A speed of 119 to 153 km per hour was Category 1, 154 to 177 km per hour was Category 2, 178 to 209 km per hour was Category 3, 210 to 248 km per hour was Category 4, and 249 km per hour or above was Category 5. The tropical cyclone was forming now. It hadn't reached its peak yet, but it had already reached Category 3. This meant that when it hit the west coast, it might reach Category 5 or above. How much damage could a Category 5 hurricane cause? A Category 5 hurricane in 2005 had caused $200 billion in economic losses. 2,000 people had died and hundreds of thousands had lost their homes. This was America, the most developed country in the world. Of course, America's rescue system had always been criticized by others. If it was just a hurricane, Chen Zhao wouldn't care. But he was afraid that it wasn't just a hurricane. If that was the death of the little bastard in Fei Lai's stomach, then today would be the first night. The hurricane would come the day after tomorrow. What if Fei Lai went into labor? No, not if. Fei Lai would definitely go into labor the night after tomorrow. Chen Zhao couldn't help Fei Lai give birth and protect her at the same time. It was impossible to send Fei Lai to the hospital. If he did, there might be more casualties. Chen Zhao called for, take tomorrow and the day after tomorrow off. Come to my house. Why? I'm a bit busy with work. Your sister's labor will be in these 2 days. You can send her to the hospital. I don't plan on sending her to the hospital, Chen Zhao said. Also, I've never delivered a baby before. Me neither. I'm an oncologist. I know how to deliver a baby, but I've never done it. I trust you. Fo was going crazy. She didn't understand what Chen Zhao was doing. What's the use of trusting me? You're going to bet Fei Lai and her baby. Chapter 1406. Fo hurried to Mirror Lake and stared at Chen Zhao and Fei Lai aggressively. Actually, Fei Lai didn't know what Chen Zhao meant either. Don't look at me. Ask Chen if you have any questions, Fei Lai said as she caressed her big belly. The hurricane is coming the day after tomorrow. I'm afraid that the hospital will lose power that night. The hospital has a backup generator. Fo looked at Chen Zhao. You're not worried at all. It's a tradition from my hometown. Do you think I'm an idiot? Fo stared at Chen Zhao with a dark expression. Actually, Fei Lai said that she wants to give birth at home. Did I say that? I thought you didn't want to go to the hospital. Fo stared at Chen Zhao. Chen, tell me honestly. Why? As long as you help me this time, I'll give you as much purple brew, nameless wine, and Dashan beer as you want this year and tomorrow. Fo also knew that Chen Zhao had made Daydream, purple brew, nameless wine, and Dashan beer. However, due to her income, she really couldn't afford anything other than Dashan beer. Although she also belonged to the high-income group, the price of the first 3 types of wine was not something that ordinary middle-class people could afford. Chen, are you sure you want Fei Lai to take the risk? Neither you nor I are gynecologists. There's also no hospital here to deliver a baby. It'll be risky for both of us. I can create the conditions. Chen Zhao and Blackie's lab was in Blackie's spatial crevice. There were many medical tools and equipment inside. As long as Chen Zhao brought out the instruments and tools, it would be fine. It wasn't a big problem. The problem was, tools, equipment, and equipment are not a problem. I have all the equipment for delivering a baby. I'll set up an operating room tonight. The basement was a semi-enclosed space. Even if there was a hurricane or even a flood, as long as the stairs were sealed, the basement wouldn't be affected. But there's another problem that you need to be prepared for. What problem? You might be the only one when delivering the baby. What do you mean? You're going out. Fei Lai's about to give birth. You're going out? Fo asked. I'm not going out. I just said that I might be busy with other things while delivering Fei Lai. What are you busy with? What's more important than Fei Lai's labor? Fo, stop asking. Fei Lai had a premonition. Are you busy with something? Anyway, it's very complicated. Don't ask anymore. Of course it's complicated if I don't explain it clearly. Once I explain it clearly, it won't be complicated anymore. Fo stubbornly wanted to know the truth. Fo was very familiar with Chen Zhao. His medical skills were excellent and he loved Fei Lai very much. It was understandable if he wanted to deliver Fei Lai himself. Geniuses were always extreme. They were more willing to believe in themselves than others. However, Chen Zhao didn't want to send Fei Lai to the hospital. He also didn't want to help her deliver the baby. This was hard for Fo to understand. To put it simply, on the day Fei Lai gives birth, bad people will come and steal our child. So, I need you to deliver the baby and I'll protect it. Do you understand? Why not hand it over to the police? How much do you think the police can do in a Category 5 hurricane? Who wants to steal your child? What a bunch of lunatics. Are you serious? Fo stared at Chen Zhao seriously. Of course. Would I joke with Fei Lai's and the child's lives? Fo rubbed her forehead. Fine, I'll believe you for now. But I'm really not confident that I can deliver Feilai's child alone. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin and thought for a while. How about I kidnap a team of gynecologists from the hospital? You're kidding me. Finally comforting for, Feilai couldn't help but ask at night. Chen, what's going on? Our child might be a witch, Chen Zhao said helplessly. Feilai's face was filled with surprise. Really? Our child is a witch. Do you have to be so excited? Of course. Our child will definitely inherit your magic talent. Okay, rest first. I'll go prepare for the surgery. The best outcome would be a natural delivery, but it was necessary to be safe. Chen Zhao didn't want any problems on this. For Feilai's delivery, Chen Zhao had to consider all aspects. There was also another piece of news that made Chen Zhao uneasy. The tropical cyclone had strengthened to Category 5 as it approached the west coast, and it was currently traveling at 260 km per hour. The hurricane that had caused great damage on the west coast in 2005 had a speed of 280 km per hour. The tropical cyclone this time was approaching the speed of the last one, and there were still about 48 hours left. Based on the development of the witch, this tropical cyclone was still showing signs of strengthening. It might even reach 300 km per hour. The destructive power of a 300 km per hour hurricane wasn't just the wind, but also the huge waves. Moreover, the Mirror Lake villa that Robio had designed for Chen Zhao could only reach 250 km per hour at most. If the wind exceeded 300 km per hour, it would cause great damage to the villa. Of course, this wasn't the main problem. The main problem was the safety of Feilai, for Jerlin, and the little witch in Feilai's stomach. Chen Zhao wanted to ask the association for help. They actually weren't weak. However, they didn't have to face the attack of the third night first, but the storm. Under the wind of 300 km per hour, Chen Zhao would give them a promotion and a raise if they could stand still, let alone fight. Eugenius, can you make the trees around Mirror Lake grow taller? Master, this requires more magic. Chen Zhao took out more angelic crystals. As a tree spirit, Eugenius was the only one among Chen Zhao's pets that could use angelic crystals. Moreover, angelic crystals could promote the growth of plants. I'll give you as much as you want. Make these plants grow to their limit. Black Ma, White Ma, go chase the cows and sheep into the forest, especially when the storm comes. Don't let the wind blow our cows away. Amon, if the wind is blowing from the other side of Mirror Lake, once it forms a wave, you'll be responsible for calming it down. If the wave is more than 5 meters high, I'll make you swim around the Pacific Ocean 10 times. Chapter 1407. The next morning, Fo was astonished by the surgery room that Chen Zhao had assembled in one night. The water in this tank is from the lake, Chen Zhao said. It can be used for water delivery. Don't worry about the water quality. It won't harm Feilai or the baby, nor will it get infected. Water delivery was a type of painless delivery, but the analgesic effect wasn't great. Feilai might not use this method when she was in labor. Right now, painless delivery technology was very mature. Chen Zhao had even prepared an analgesic device for intraspinal delivery. Chen, do you know how to inject analgesics into the spinal canal? I don't. Chen Zhao shook his head. I don't know either, Fo said. Chen Zhao and Fo knew the theory, but they needed clinical experience to actually do it. Then we better find an anesthetist. An anesthetist with a painless delivery certificate had to have interned with the attending for at least a year, observing or assisting more than 20 times. Only then could he have the right to do it alone. Anesthesia for pregnant women was injected into the spinal canal. The technology was very mature, but there was a strict limit to the amount of injection. Usually, it was injected into the subarachnoid space. Too much wouldn't be good for the mother or the baby, but too little wouldn't have the analgesic effect. Moreover, the analgesic process was continuous. It would be injected every few to 10 minutes. Different levels of analgesic would be given according to the mother's pain level. Do you know a doctor? Chen Zhao asked. Yes. Invite him over. It's best if he comes today. He can ask for the pay. You didn't say that to me, For said. If you want, I can say the same to you. For actually didn't lack money. After all, Winnip had such a large business. If she needed money, she could just call her mother. Even if she called Chen Zhao, he would give her a blank check. For and Fei Lai both had the right to inherit Winnip's wealth. Of course, the sisters didn't seem interested. A caesarean section could also be considered a painless delivery, except for the preparation of analgesic injections. Chen Zhao also prepared normal caesarean equipment and an operating table. Chen, can you tell me who's trying to steal my child? Go ask Fei Lai. If she's willing to tell you, she'll naturally tell you. Okay. For plan to ask Fei Lai later. Are the sterilization conditions in place? Even if For trusted Chen Zhao's preparations, disinfection was the most basic requirement. However, this wasn't the isolated operating room in the hospital, so For had to ask. Yes, there's a high-powered air purification converter installed over there. Remember to turn on the air purification converter every time you open the staircase. Our hospital has this equipment too. It's at least 800,000, For said. Did you prepare this for Fei Lai? Actually, I already have it, Chen Zhao said. Originally, this equipment was prepared in the laboratory in the space crevice. Is there anything else I need to prepare? You'd better give me a list. For had indeed given him many more lists, some of which he hadn't prepared. It wasn't a necessity, but an emergency item. Most of the equipment, tools, and drugs were for Chen Zhao and Blackie's experiments. It was not specially prepared for midwifery, so there were still some shortcomings. Therefore, he had to prepare everything today. He could only go out to prepare. Oh Kula, you actually failed. Mr. Warren, my sister suddenly mastered enhancement magic, and it's a powerful enhancement magic. Okula Singh stood in front of the man with his head lowered. You're really useless, Warren said coldly. At this moment, the jackals around Okula all growled at Warren with their teeth bared. They were all loyal servants of Okula Singh. Okula quickly restrained the jackals. She didn't want to offend Warren. A mere enhancement spell actually defeated you. You disappoint me, Warren said. It seems that I have to do it myself. Okula's expression couldn't help but change. Mr. Warren, please give me another chance. This time, I will definitely get it. I don't have time to waste on you. Warren glanced at Okula coldly. With that, Warren turned around and left, leaving Okula standing on the spot hesitantly. At the moment, Navots and Delamore were shopping. The storm was coming, but as long as it hadn't arrived, people wouldn't stop enjoying life. Merchants wouldn't stop doing business either. On the streets of Beverly Hills, all the luxury stores were still welcoming customers. Both carried big and small bags. That was women's nature. Even though they were both witches, they were more interested in shopping and discussing luxury goods. Suddenly, Navot's body froze. Daily Moore turned around and saw that Navot's body seemed to be frozen. Singh, what's wrong? Navot Singh's expression turned ugly. What's wrong? There's an enemy. Navot's body was frozen, but her eyes could still move. She stared ahead and finally locked onto a figure. The traitor of the Roma, Warren Jerem. He was different from a family like the Singh family that basically abandoned Roma traditions. Warren Jerem wasn't abandoning Roma traditions. Instead, he was completely going against Roma traditions. He was doing something that was strictly forbidden and taboo. This was similar to one choosing to emigrate, and the other choosing to break the law in his own country. It was more or less the same. Of course, what Waylon Jerem did was far worse than breaking the law. Navots chanted a magic incantation. Weakness, mirror image. Dahlia Moore, stab me in the neck with your brooch, Not Singh said. Delamore immediately took off her brooch and stabbed it into Navot's neck. Then, Warren Jerem, who was standing opposite her, grabbed his neck. Navot's freezing spell was suddenly lifted. Go, let's go. Navots glanced at Warren Jerem and turned to leave. Are we going home? No. Do you know where Mr. Chin lives? You're going to find Mr. Chin. Why are you looking for him? The person who attacked me just now is very powerful. You and I can't fight him. We can only borrow Mr. Chen's ability. Chapter 1408. Can Mr. Chen's ability fight against him? Mr. Chen has an enhancement ability and it's very powerful. As long as he uses it properly, he can eliminate most of that person's combat power. Dahlia Moore brought Nawat Singh to Mirror Lake. Navots instantly sensed the spiritual energy in the air. So many elements. It's a spiritualist's paradise. It was Dahlia Moore's second time here, but the feeling was the same as the first time. She didn't find anything different from other places except for the fresher air. Is it good here? Very good, Nawat Singh said. My family also has an elemental territory, a place for the awakened to train. But the elemental concentration in that place is at least 3 times lower than here, said Nawat Singh. The car stopped in front of the villa. Dahlia Moore walked to the door with complicated feelings and knocked. Just then, an unfamiliar woman opened the door. Dahlia Moore didn't know the woman. Could she be Chen Zhao's lover? Is Mr. Chen here? Chen went out. How can I help you? When will he be back? Dahlia Moore asked. Can I go in and wait for him? For was a bit hesitant. She'd heard that someone wanted to steal Chen Zhao and Fei Lai's child, so she was quite worried. Now that 2 unfamiliar women had come, she couldn't help but think. I'll call and ask Chen. Of course. Go ahead. For called Chen Zhao right in front of Dahlia Moore and Nawat Singh. Hey, Chen, there are 2 ladies at the door. They want to see you, For said. What are their names? For looked at Dahlia Moore. Before she could ask, Dahlia Moore seemed to know what she wanted to ask. She said first, I'm Dahlia Moore. She's Nawat Singh. Let them stay for now and wait for me, Chen Zhao said. When Dahlia Moore and Nawat Singh entered the living room, they saw the pregnant Fei Lai. Madam, I'm very sorry about what happened last time. Dahlia went up to apologize. It's okay, Fei Lai replied gently. A while later, Chen Zhao returned. A woman got off the car with him. Miss Xiaola, please come in. Shara looked at the mansion. 2 days at most. I can get $200,000. Of course, I promise. Chen Zhao nodded. Shayla was the anesthesiologist found through 4. She was also the best anesthesiologist and anesthetist in Chantilly Hospital. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, was practicing medicine illegally, so he also gave her a very high price, $200,000 for 2 days. Chen Zhao was an illegal doctor himself, so he knew how much it would cost for a legal doctor to practice medicine illegally. Dahlia Moore and Nawat Singh stood up when they saw Chen Zhao come in. Shara, have a chat with 4. Then take a look at my surgery room. I still have some personal matters to attend to. Shara nodded and walked to 4 and Fei Lai. Lady Dalrymple, Miss Knotts, let's have a chat. The two girls followed him out of the house. What can I do for you two? Mr. Chin, I'd like to borrow your ability, Knotts said. Borrow my ability? How? Chen Zhao asked, confused. Mirror image, Knotts said. My spell. As long as it doesn't affect me, you can borrow it. I don't mind, Chen Zhao said calmly. But I'm not sure when I need to borrow it, because I'm not sure when my enemies will appear. You can't have me follow you, right? If that's the case, you might as well let me help you. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Also, I'm busy these 2 days. Oh, since you're a perception type witch, what level can your perception type magic reach? Mr. Chen, what level do you need? There are many types of perception type magic, and I know many of them. I need a perception type ability like a strategic radar. I can sense the number of enemies within a certain range. This spell isn't difficult. I don't want a one-time perception, Chen Zhao said. I want it to last at least 5 hours. 5 hours. The first thing Knotts thought of was the Night of Awakening, because it lasted from 8 at night to 1 in the morning. Knotts asked again, is there anyone in that room who's going to awaken? That's none of your business. Can you do it? I can't last that long, Nawat said. The spell wasn't difficult, but it was a consumptive spell. It used up a lot of mana. There was no way she could continue to use this spell for hours on end. I can only use it a dozen times at most. These are mana potions. Chen Zhao tossed the 2 bottles to Nawats. The potions were like a drop in the bucket for Chen Zhao. If there are potions, I can double it. Knotts didn't expect Chen Zhao to be willing to give her such a precious potion. Tonight? No, tomorrow night, Chen Zhao said. Second night. Knotts' expression changed. No, it's too dangerous. Then forget it. Go ahead, Chen Zhao replied coldly. He didn't force it. Nawats Hingis and Dalrymple had left. It was mainly Knotts. She felt that it was too risky. The second night was such a terrifying thing. Singer, are we really just going to stand by and watch? Dalrymple had wanted to use this to deepen her intimacy with Chen Zhao. Dalrymple, it's not that I don't want to watch, but it's really too dangerous. You don't understand what the second night means at all. He's not alone. He has companions, like Gaia, Dalrymple said. Gaia said that she's confident that she can protect the second night alone. One person can't protect the second night alone. Maybe not alone, but Gaia is still very powerful. I saw it with my own eyes. You're saying that we shouldn't watch. If we help Mr. Chin, he probably won't watch if we're in trouble in the future. Knotts thought deeply for a long time and suddenly stepped on the brakes. Maybe you're right. Chapter 1409. Chen Zhao was a bit surprised that Nawat Singh and Dahlia Moore had returned. Originally, he wasn't angry that they'd left. After all, normal spiritualists would have a hard time dealing with the first night alone. They'd probably piss their pants when they heard that it was the second night. No one had the obligation to sacrifice themselves for someone else. Mr. Chen, we're willing to help you guard the second night, but if the situation deteriorates, we'll still leave. I don't need you to fight, Chen Zhao said. You just need to help me detect the enemies in a large area. Are you sure you don't need me to fight? Nawats asked. We can all help you more or less. Using your perception magic will be the greatest help, Chen Zhao said. To Nawats, Chen Zhao was still a bit arrogant. Chen Zhao still had something to consider. Should he keep Jerlin at home or send her to the association? Jerlin, are you going to Auntie Gaia? No, Jerlin is staying. Jerlin wants to be the first to see the birth of a little sister. How do you know it's a little sister? Maybe it's a little brother. No, it's a little sister, Jerlin said firmly, as if answering Qin Zhao's question with a predetermined answer. Qin Zhao smiled. Of course, he knew that his second child was also a daughter. Daily Moore, Navots, Shera, For, and Feilai, as well as Qin Zhao, who was carrying Jerlin, sat at various places at the dining table. Qin Zhao was the one who'd cooked tonight. Daily Moore was the first to speak. Mr. Qin, your cooking skills are really good. I need a chef at home. Of course, Daily Moore was only joking. Not counting her parents' wealth, Qin Zhao was richer than her. When I lose my job, I'll consider going to your house to be a chef. No one would take a joke seriously. Qin Zhao wasn't someone who couldn't take a joke. I heard that the hurricane that landed on the west coast this time is already faster than the one in 2005, Shera said. Shera said, Mr. Qin, your villa can withstand a hurricane with a speed of over 300 kilometers per hour, right? The surrounding forest can slow down the wind. When this villa was built, it was designed to defend against Category 5 hurricanes. In addition, the upper and lower floors of the villa have two different architectural structures. They can be completely enclosed. That is to say, even if the upper floor of the villa is completely destroyed and submerged by the lake, the lower floor can be completely enclosed. There are enough food reserves and landlines in the lower floor. In addition, there is a passage to Mirror Lake in the second basement. As long as you can hold your breath for a minute, you can safely swim to the outside. Hearing that, Shera felt much more at ease. Moreover, in the face of a hurricane with winds of over 300 kilometers per hour, it might not be safe to stay in the hospital. Compared to China, which had long been accustomed to typhoons and was more experienced in this area, whether it was the country or the state governments, they had never had any experience in preventing hurricanes. Even if they caused catastrophic consequences, they might not take action. The tragedy in 2005 was enough to illustrate all of this. Of the nearly 2,000 people who died, only one-third of them were directly killed by the hurricane. The rest were drowned or starved to death because they could not be rescued. Even the crimes that occurred after the disaster were an important reason for the final death toll. As the most developed country in the world with the most perfect system, it had become the most chaotic country in the world in the face of a disaster. A tropical cyclone with a speed of 300 kilometers per hour was something Southeast Asian countries would encounter once or twice every 2 to 3 years. However, countries in North America rarely encountered a tropical cyclone of this intensity. Right now, the rich people on the West Coast had all gone to other cities to seek refuge. No, more accurately, they were not going to seek refuge. They were going on vacation. For rich people, going anywhere was the same. Stephen and Rasfa even invited Qin Zhao to go with them, but Qin Zhao clearly could not leave. However, there were still more than 10 hours before the tropical cyclone made landfall. Qin Zhao was not sure if it would continue to grow stronger. The West Coast was in the tropical zone. There was an obvious temperature difference between it and the Pacific Ocean. Tropical cyclones themselves were cyclones produced by convective temperature differences. The larger the temperature difference, the stronger the cyclone. According to past experience, every tropical cyclone that made landfall on the West Coast would continue to grow stronger before it made landfall. If it continued to grow stronger, it might become the strongest hurricane in the new century. Everyone was enjoying themselves at the dinner table. However, a piece of news that was broadcasted on the TV cast a shadow over everyone's mood. According to NASA's research, tropical cyclone which was not a real tropical storm. It was an El Niño phenomenon. The Weather Bureau also issued a red alert at the same time. At the same time, there was a list of all the major cities on the West Coast. They were all red alerts. Los Angeles was in the area with the strongest winds and was about to face the center of the storm. The center of a tropical storm was not as peaceful as in novels. In fact, the closer one was to the center, the stronger the wind. Currently, NASA and the Weather Bureau had announced that the wind at the center of the storm had reached 335 kilometers per hour. It was still getting stronger. No one knew how strong the wind would be when it made landfall. El Niño, which is derived from Spanish. It originally meant Holy Infant. At the beginning of the 19th century, fishermen in Spanish-speaking countries such as Ecuador and Peru in South America discovered that every few years, from October to March of the following year, a warm current would move southward along the coast, raising the temperature of the surface sea significantly. The Peruvian cold current was originally prevalent on the east coast of the Pacific Ocean in South America. The fish that moved with the cold current made the Peruvian fishery one of the 4 largest in the world. However, when this warm current appeared, the fish that liked cold water would die in large numbers, causing the fishermen to suffer a disaster. Because this phenomenon was usually at its peak around Christmas, the helpless fishermen who suffered from natural disasters called it the Son of God, the Holy Infant. El Niño generally occurs once every 4 years, causing immeasurable damage to the world. However, it was uncertain and impossible to calculate. 4 years was just a calculation based on past experience. In reality, this was not the case. For example, the devastating flood in China in 1998. No one could forget that disaster. That night, the dark clouds over Los Angeles disappeared. It was rare to see the bright stars in the sky. However, everyone knew that this was not a good sign. Please remember the original domain name of this book. Mobile version website. Chapter 14:10. That night, Chen Zhao didn't sleep. Instead, he sat on the balcony. During the first half of the night, there were no clouds in the sky, and the stars shone brightly. But in the latter half of the night, the starry sky was once again covered by dark clouds. The wind was blowing. At 6 o'clock in the morning. Chen, suddenly, he heard Fei Lai scream in the bedroom. He immediately stood up and returned to the bedroom. Fei Lai, I'm here. Fei Lai touched her lower body. It was wet, Chen, my stomach hurts. Fei Lai said. Chen Zhao immediately turned on the lights and saw that Fei Lai's face was pale. Chen Zhao couldn't help but feel nervous. Was she going to give birth? What should he do? What should he do now? He couldn't be nervous now, at least not in front of Fei Lai. First, he had to confirm if Fei Lai's membranes were broken. The bed was already wet. Yes, the membranes were broken, and the amniotic fluid was coming out. Fei Lai, I'll call 4 over immediately. Chen Zhao immediately ran to 4's room and called, 4, wake up. Fei Lai's in labor. Bang bang bang, Chen Zhao's voice was not soft at all. 4 wasn't the only one who heard it. Everyone in the villa, including the pets, heard it as well. 4 ran out of the room in her pajamas and followed Chen Zhao into the bedroom. 4 immediately went up to check on Fei Lai. The membrane isn't completely ruptured, 4 said. I know. Chen Zhao nodded. Send Fei Lai down first. Chen Zhao tried his best to carry Fei Lai. Just then, a small figure crept into the room. Daddy, is Mommy going to give little Jerlin the little sister? Alright, I don't have to worry about little Jerlin asking me where I came from anymore. Chen Zhao chuckled. Yeah, little Jerlin has to be good today. Little Jerlin has always been obedient, little Jerlin pouted and said unhappily. Through the elevator, Chen Zhao carried Fei Lai to the surgery room. At this time, Xiaola also got up and rushed to the operating room. Jerlin also came down. Chen Zhao looked at her and scratched his head. Should he kick little Jerlin out? Little Jerlin wasn't even 10 months old yet. Wouldn't it be bad to let her see such a bloody scene? Would it cast a shadow on her future? But just then, Chen Zhao suddenly felt an evil spirit appear in his villa. It was still early in the morning. How could an evil spirit appear at this time? Moreover, it was within the boundaries of his villa. But soon, the evil spirit was destroyed. It was Blackie. For, Shara, I'll leave this to you too, Chen Zhao said with a serious expression. For stared at Chen Zhao with widened eyes. Chen Zhao gave For a look. All right, go. For then looked at Jerlin. What about Jerlin? Let her stay here, Chen Zhao said. Abidos, come down. Abidos moved his huge body and climbed down the stairs. Although Shara had stayed here for a night, it was her first time seeing Abidos. Startled, he looked at Abidos in shock. Abidos, stay here, Chen Zhao ordered. Eat anything that comes in. Yes, Ada. Abidos crawled to a corner on his own and curled up, ignoring Shara's surprised look. For, on the other hand, was much calmer. She had been here too many times and had seen Abidos before. She had even witnessed Abidos' growth with her own eyes. She had seen Abidos grow from a small lizard into a giant. Also, I have to seal the entrance to prevent the lake water from pouring in and flooding this place. Okay. For nodded. Then Chen Zhao turned and walked out of the basement. For, what's that? It doesn't eat humans, right? Don't worry, For said calmly. I watched Abidos grow up. He's very obedient. It's just a mutated Komodo dragon. In fact, Abidos ate humans. Last March, when Fei Lai and Chen Zhao had gone to Sacramento, they had encountered bandits on the way. Abidos had bitten off a bandit's leg and swallowed it. Of course, For wouldn't tell Shara about this in case she panicked. Chen Zhao sealed the basement entrance. By then, Knots and Dalmore had woken up too. After washing up, they saw Chen Zhao sitting in the living room. But they didn't see Blackie sitting across from him. Chen Zhao looked back at the two and said, "There's breakfast in the kitchen." There was a whooshing sound outside the window. It was the sound of the forest being blown by the strong wind. Rain slapped against the glass window, making pitter-patter sounds. The wind outside was already very strong. The wind here had been blocked by the surrounding trees, so it was at least halved. If there weren't any trees around, it would be hurricane-level wind. Chen Zhao's pets had all hidden in the forest. They didn't have to worry about being blown away in the forest. Chen Zhao was sitting in the living room, but his small world senses covered the basement, observing Fei Lai's situation. Fei Lai's membranes hadn't completely ruptured. The cervix was still expanding naturally. This was a normal physiological reaction of natural labor. Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen. Dahlia called out twice and Chen Zhao stood up suddenly. Ha! You called me. Chen Zhao was already overly nervous. Is Miss Fei Lai in labor? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. Later, no matter what happens, don't go outside. As long as the mansion is still here, don't run around. If the mansion is destroyed, take the elevator to the second floor to hide. It's still early, right? No, it's late. Chen Zhao shook his head. Suddenly, Dalmore felt that Chen Zhao's aura had changed. It had turned into a red dangerous aura. Navots also felt Chen Zhao's dangerous aura. Not just Chen Zhao, but they also felt a dark red dangerous aura in front of him. Mr. Chen, is there something in front of you? Don't worry, Chen Zhao said calmly. It's harmless and will protect you. Qin Zhao and Blackie's strategy was that Qin Zhao would be in charge of the outside and Blackie would be in charge of the inside. Qin Zhao was responsible for stopping the main force of the evil spirits, but he wasn't confident that he could completely stop the fish that slipped through the net. Now was the time for Blackie to act. Don't say that Blackie was wasting his talents. This was the best arrangement. What Qin Zhao wanted was absolute certainty. He would arrange whatever was the safest. Suddenly, Navot's shingles felt a strong palpitation. Then, Navot's legs turned to jelly. She saw a huge black shadow rushing towards them in the air outside the window. Ghost ship. It was a ghost ship. Please remember the original domain name of this book, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor mobile version. Chapter 14:11. Nawat's Hingis and Dalymore nearly pulled their hair out. So unlucky. A specter ship was actually blown here. Moreover, it was heading straight for the villa. Was there anything more unlucky than this? Qin Zhao looked at the ghost ship and walked out of the door. The moment he opened the door, the wind howled into the living room. Knotts and Dalymore couldn't stand steadily. Mr. Qin. Where are you going? Navot Singh exclaimed. Didn't this guy see the specter ship rushing towards him? Knotts rushed to the window and looked at Qin Zhao's figure outside. The bow of the ghost ship was facing them. They couldn't see the length of the ship, but the height of the pole was at least 60 meters. This was an incredible ship, and on the wooden frame of the ship was a statue of the goddess Athena. The ship was in ruins, but the flag on it was very clear. It was a pirate flag with a black background. A naked woman knelt on the ground and a long sword pierced through the woman's chest. Virgo! Navot Singh exclaimed. Although the rain hit the glass window, making it hard to see clearly, Navot still recognized the origin of the specter ship. One of the top 10 ghost ships, Virgo. Not every specter ship could be recognized. Many specter ships were unknown before they fell silent. But any ghost ship with a name would definitely be famous on the sea, both in the past and present. As for the 10 great specter ships, they had a terrifying reputation. Qin Zhao raised his right arm. This was just the beginning. He didn't want to waste too much time. White light. The ghost ship was instantly enveloped by the white light. Then, not even scraps were left. Everything turned to dust. Knott's face was filled with disbelief. What had just happened? What was that white light? She couldn't understand what had happened in that instant. Qin Zhao's small world sensed to see if there were any survivors. There weren't any. Only then did Qin Zhao return to the living room. Now, Navots looked at Qin Zhao in a different way. Virgo. Destroyed. The famous Virgo was destroyed just like that. That was the specter ship. It was the famous Virgo. Furthermore, there was no thrilling battle. In an instant, everything was over. Mr. Qin. That was ghost ship, right? How did you do it? Qin Zhao glanced at Navots. I think you got something wrong. We're not facing the second night, but the third. The awakened one is my unborn daughter. So, while it's still early and the wind hasn't reached its peak, you still have a chance to escape. Knot Singh and Dalymore were both shocked. The third night. Were they about to face the third night? Dahlia was still alright, because she didn't have an accurate idea of how terrifying the third night was. But Navots Hingis knew. She knew how terrible it was. That would be a disaster. Mr. Qin, are you kidding me? Now that my family is in the basement, do you think I would joke around? Navots was trembling slightly. Mr. Qin, do you not understand the meaning of the third night? I know, Chen Zhao said calmly. But now, my family is facing the third night. Navots Hingis looked at Dahlia. Dahlia, you go first. I'll stay. Mr. Chen, I'll stay here for now, but if I think it's necessary, I'll leave too. I'll stay too, Dahlia said. Thank you. Chen Zhao nodded. I'll still say the same thing. If you stay in the mansion, you won't be harmed. Navots didn't have much confidence in Chen Zhao's promise. After all, this was the third night. Plus, it didn't seem like a normal third night. Chen Zhao sat back down on the sofa and continued observing the basement. Feilai's labor seemed to be slower than a normal natural labor. Thankfully, Feilai was healthy and strong, so as long as there were no major problems, it was acceptable even if it took longer. Chen Zhao didn't care if it was natural, cesarean, or painless labor. As long as Feilai was safe, as long as the child was safe, nothing else mattered. After getting rid of the Spectre ship, the attack seemed to stop. In the next hour or so, there was still no movement. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao remained tense. At 9:40 in the morning, the TV broadcasted an emergency announcement again. The wind at the center of the storm reached 368 kilometers per hour. This was a terrifying number. It might even be the most powerful tropical storm in 100 years. 20-meter-tall waves rose along the coastline. The coastline was completely locked down. At the same time, the weather station also suggested that residents living in the suburbs should hide in their basements and prepare for waterproofing. Every TV station was broadcasting the news of the tropical storm. Some anchors even claimed that this would be the toughest test in American history. Just then, Chen Zhao stood up again. Navots Hingis and Dahlia both looked at him uneasily. It wasn't just because of the third night, but also because of this unprecedented storm. Of course, so far, they had not linked the two events together. But Chen Zhao felt that they were the same event. Mr. Chen, are there more enemies? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. Navots Hingis was a bit surprised. Chen Zhao's senses were stronger than she'd imagined. Of course, Chen Zhao's maximum range was 30 meters, which was the range of his mini-world. On the other hand, if Navots used perception offense, it might not be as clear as Chen Zhao within 30 meters, but it would be more accurate beyond 30 meters. Navots used his super area of effect perception. In an instant, an image flashed in his mind. Hundreds of evil spirits appeared within a few hundred meters in front of him. How was this possible? It wasn't even 10 in the morning. How could there be a large-scale attack of evil spirits? She'd thought that the ghost ship had been blown over by the wind. They were just unlucky. But now, these hundreds of evil spirits couldn't have been blown over by the wind too, right? This was too unusual. It didn't fit the pattern of the Night of Awakening. Also, why were there so many evil spirits at this time? Could Chen Zhao deal with them alone? Should she go out and help? Dahlia, stay here. I'll go out for a bit. Navots finally decided to go out and see if she could help. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 14:12. However, Navots regretted it as soon as she stepped out. She'd underestimated the wind outside. When she reached the front yard, she almost lost her balance. Fortunately, there was a pillar supporting the awning, and Navots grabbed onto it. Of course, the canopy had already been blown away. Only the pillar was left standing there. But even with the support of the pillar, Navots still felt it was difficult. She couldn't even help Chen Zhao fight. However, Chen Zhao seemed to not feel the wind at all. He just stood there. The hundreds and thousands of evil spirits flew over from above Mirror Lake. It was truly terrifying. They were so dense that they were like an army charging over. They gave off a chaotic, disorderly, and manic aura. This aura gathered above their heads and accompanied them as they advanced. At the same time, it made them stronger and scarier. In Navot's size, these hundreds of evil spirits were the scariest part of the third night. But reality wasn't like that. It was daytime now, and this was only the prelude. Judging from the trend of getting weaker and stronger, Navot's didn't know what kind of attack she would face later on. The beginning was already so scary. What kind of attack would there be later? Could the few of them really defend against such an attack? Why did you come out? Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at Navot's. I came out to help you. Go in. I don't need your help here. Be careful. Navot Singh suddenly shouted. A evil spirit waved its arms and grabbed at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised his arm and grabbed the evil spirit. The evil spirit struggled in his hand, but it couldn't break free. Eye of the lightning, attract lightning. Boom, 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 bolts of lightning descended from the sky and landed on Chen Zhao's right arm. Nawat Singles was shocked to the core. Looking at Chen Zhao's unmoving body, she wondered if the lightning was attracted by Chen Zhao. He said he knew some elemental magic. Was it thunder magic? And this was called only a little. The evil spirit in Chen Zhao's right hand had already turned to ashes under the lightning. Chen Zhao's right arm also gathered a large amount of lightning. The mouth of Gluttony spat out an electric arc. The terrifying electric arc broke through the wind and rain and swept across the sky above Mirror Lake, remaining in the air for more than 10 seconds. In less than 10 seconds, hundreds of evil spirits had been wiped out. In the storm, Chen Zhao was invincible. The harsher the weather, the more lightning Chen Zhao could absorb. Of course, he could convert more of it into magic power. Navot's face was filled with shock. Was this what Chen Zhao had said in the past? Knowing some elemental magic. This was a powerful magic that she had never heard of or seen before. He said he majored in strengthening. It was obviously a lie. Looks like it'll stop for a while. Chen Zhao glanced at the storm and turned to bring Navot Singh into the house. Mr. Chen, it seems like there's no point for me to stay here. Put on this headset, Chen Zhao said. If you notice any stragglers while I'm busy fighting, inform me immediately. Chen Zhao had never planned on letting Navots and Delimore help him fight. They only stayed here to ensure that nothing would go wrong. In less than 10 minutes, Navot said, there's another wave of evil spirits attacking. Some of them are very, very scary. Navots looked at Chen Zhao worriedly. Could Chen Zhao really deal with such frequent attacks by himself? Chen Zhao walked out again. A few minutes later, he returned to the house. Mr. Chen, it's done. No, those evil spirits are still here, Navots asked in confusion, looking up at Chen Zhao who'd just entered the room. I'll use my clone to deal with them, Chen Zhao said. Navots realized that the evil spirits were indeed disappearing quickly. Clone magic. Chen Zhao had said last time that he indeed knew clone magic. But Navots hadn't thought much of it at the time. After all, most clone magic was passed down through bloodlines. At least, Navots hadn't seen any powerful clone spiritualists. However, Chen Zhao's clone was actually able to fight against so many evil spirits, including some powerful ones. Those powerful evil spirits couldn't be compared to regular evil spirits or spiritual bodies. Before they arrived, they'd been devouring each other. Some would become even more violent and chaotic. Their strength was 10 to dozens of times stronger than ordinary evil spirits. Navots could only sense the existence of the evil spirits and the strength of their auras. But when she stood before the floor-to-ceiling window and looked outside, she could see Chen Zhao's 12 clones. Every one of them was extremely powerful. Even the evil spirit, which Navots thought was extremely powerful, could only take one strike from Chen Zhao's clone. Navots was amazed. Not only was Chen Zhao's elemental magic powerful, but his clone magic was also powerful. She saw with her own eyes that one of Chen Zhao's clones ripped apart a 10-meter-long evil spirit with its bare hands. If it were him, the biggest possibility was that he would flee in defeat. Navots thought back to 2 days ago. She'd even used the tone of a senior to teach Chen Zhao how to use magic and fight. At the thought, Navots Shingles felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. It was like a kindergarten teacher telling a Chinese Academy of Sciences doctor how to study. And the battle lasted much longer than what Navots expected. Before the first wave was destroyed, the second wave came. Chen Zhao had 12 clones, but they didn't know magic. Now, to Chen Zhao, the 12 clones' greatest use was no longer to fight separately. Instead, they combined into one. Or it could be a battle that didn't have much strength and lasted a long time. He'd let the 12 clones fight. Navots had thought that Chen Zhao's clones wouldn't be able to last long. But reality wasn't like that. Chen Zhao's clones were extremely strong and could last for a long time. In fact, as long as Chen Zhao's clones weren't destroyed or taken back, they would always exist. An evil spirit escaped, Navots said. It's coming from the right side of the villa. Suddenly, the red ball of dangerous aura in the living room disappeared. In just 3 seconds, the evil spirit disappeared too. Navots was shocked. It wasn't a dangerous aura. It was a despairing aura. Please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor mobile version. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.